podcaster? Because I'm not recording on my end.
I can. Let's see. Can you record on your end?
Yeah, I can. I just
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure.
I just actually forgot to set it up, and I've because I
Yeah,
usually
you're
tell
fine.
it before, and usually I've done it before more when I got the multiple people because it's just easier. But yeah, that was my mistake. I
Yeah,
should have set that up. So,
you're good.
but let's see. Okay, so we're already live there, which is good. I'll send out the links, and we're nice and on time. Look at that, folks. If you're here, you're nice and early. Look at that.
Or even a little early. We'll get a few
We're
minutes to just chitty chat.
according to Apple, I'm 5 minutes early. That's what it says on my iPhone and my Mac.
Look at that. You did it. You got three. You got a three image there. Look at you. You did what I wanted.
Yeah, there was a couple I tried, and it was because it's but what is it? Dimensions and stuff are always fun because I learned that early on in podcasting once Taylor went to school for it and everything. Of like, I used to be able to take any image and just be like, oh, this will work. But then he's like, well, look how stretched this person is, and look at the way this person's head. Like, that's not natural. I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. So there's a couple rundowns. But I was like, you know what? This is the one that worked the best. The Spider-Man, like, I want to see if anybody we're live now, so someone's gonna hear me say it, but I did not make the Ryan Reynolds and Tom Holland one. Search it up and you'll find the artist credit. I don't know who it is, but I'm waiting for one person to say that's not Andrew or that's not Tom Holland's suit. That's the Andrew Garfield one. But it's you got the picture
You
and it was
know.
highest quality.
Yep, it's what we can do on our shoestring budget.
Exactly. Okay, we're see. Okay, no, we're live. I got a notification on my computer, but not my phone. That's always good stuff. So I'll get this ready to go.
Just when we're there and talked about Punisher, we get a little. It sent a little link about John Bernthal's
I
weigh
saw,
in.
yeah, I retweeted that. I will share my opinion on that in half an hour. Let's see here.
We're starting to watch Ted Lasso, and we're on the second episode. It is a delightful show.
I hear good things, and it's funny. I like Jason Sudeikis, but I was never. I just kind of just wrote it off. I don't know if it's just because it did like any of the previews didn't appeal to me, or it's just that I know I have 10,000 other things I have to catch up on. So, but yeah, I that's all I
Yeah,
hear so
we're
far is good.
yeah. I mean, we're about to lose Apple TV Plus in
Mm-hmm.
February, so I'm probably just gonna be one of these people that joins up for when they finish up.
Yeah.
When they finish up like certain series, like For All Mankind that's starting in February, so I'll have to rejoin when it's all done.
Yeah, morning show's probably one, and then I am interested
Yeah.
in Cherry, but yeah, there's not much for Apple TV for me to like stay subscribed all year round, just because they're still relatively new and stuff. If they would have, got that James
Mhm.
Bond, that could have worked out, but
Hey, you never know; it still might happen. Now that they've gone back to November, where a Bond should be.
yeah, I just don't think they're gonna get that six. They're right to ask for the 600 million. Not right, I mean, but in the sense of like of them trying to make a profit. But I just don't know. You can't realistically ask for that. It's very tough to. Okay. So, are you going to be watching any playoff football this weekend, sir?
Maybe hasn't really interested
No.
me as much this year.
Yeah.
Has not been
Well,
the same at all.
no, it's definitely not. It's definitely weird to watch, but my team's the number one seed, so I just want Aaron
That's
Rodgers to
true.
win
It is
something
Aaron, it
before
is
we talk.
Rogers.
Yeah, they'll get to the
He
NFC game and
has. He's
choke.
got. He,
I want two. I want two.
yeah, it does help. I mean, if Eli can get two, it does
Well,
does help.
exactly. If Eli Manning can get two, because like I don't believe it. I think winning the Super Bowl is a great achievement and it's very hard to do. But there's always people like, "Well, it was a fluke. He only won it once," and it's like,
I wouldn't call it a fluke by any stretch. If anyone calls
me
anyone winning
either.
any Super Bowl a fluke,
Me either. But that's why I want to win it at least twice, so it takes it out a little bit. But okay, so the links are out there. We are 1 minute away.
There we go. There's the. You're gonna throw it in the group chat.
I will do that. I messaged Brent earlier this week when I sent him my unpopular opinions, and he's like, "Every week I gotta adjust. I don't know who it is when I put my new name." So
It's true. What is it this week? I'm not familiar with this one this week.
Marshawn Rowe is a new character from Star Wars High Republic that I quite enjoy. So yeah, I'd say
Gotcha.
he's on the
Yeah.
villainous
Yep. You're
side.
right.
He
Yeah, I
was he
remember.
was
I
a
listened to your
delight.
review. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, he was a delight, an evil delight.
Just like Ted Lasso, a delight.
Mhm. Okay, I put that out there. I am starting to record on
I
my
gotta.
end. So whenever you're ready,
Oh, let me
sir.
do that. Let me do that right now.
So, let's see.
All right. Make sure that's on. Yep, that's on. So, all right, I'm recording. There we go.
Busy week. Hello, Clay. It's gonna be a good one.
Oh yeah. All right, let me do this one more thing. Let's try this again.
It's all about the game and how you play it.
Do you think
Everyone out
Green Bay
there?
is actually going to pull it off, though?
No, not at all. We just
Such
have
a
this
fan.
thing.
Such a fan.
I'm realistic. We just have this thing where we get to the NFC Championship game and then we choke. And I just think we're going up against the Rams first. They have a very scary defense, and then after that, it's either the Saints or Tom Brady. So it's not a easy path. Like it shouldn't be. It's the playoffs, but they're both paths that scare me very much. So I hope for the best, expect the worst.
All right, so I'm recording. I've got it out. I've got laptops galore out.
Mhm.
So, all right, let's get this 3+ hour thing underway. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel universe, from comics, TV to movies. We'll go from the Mojoverse or 616 to the Negative Zone to bring the Marvel universe right to you. My name is the Uncanny Chris.
I'm the podcaster of Mischief, Trav Snell.
Alliance assemble.
Assemble for the
Oh, look at that!
first.
Are you trying to do the Power Rangers
Kind of, or kind of like they, in Endgame, they do the whole like they make the Tony Hark's heart. Have you seen that
Oh,
image
yep,
before?
yep.
Yeah, and then Natasha says, "Oh, see you in a minute," and guess what? They don't see her in a minute, folks. They don't. It's very sad when you watch it back. But no, I'm very happy to be back in here in 2021. You interested?
Happy New Year.
Yes, happy New Year, sir. Yeah, you interested a good show last week, and I hate missing the first one, the New Year, and the big 3-0, but sometimes that happens with work. But I'm happy to be back, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy to be joined by our merry Marvelites in the
Mhm.
chat and listening out there. So it's we got a ton of news that neither one of us saw coming. But I mean,
No.
when we saw Mr. Feige giving a lot of interviews, I didn't think he'd drop all this knowledge on us, but he definitely did.
Well, it was so funny because Sunday, that's why, and we're still talking about, because me and Chris went back and forth yesterday, like, hey, how do we do this? Because there's just so much news. But that's why, there's stuff going on in the world, and we're going to talk about the Punisher logo stuff. But we're like, okay, we'll talk about that because there's some little news out there, but that'll be a good like main topic. We got a main topic to talk about, and then it's like boom, 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 and it's just like, and there's even stuff that we punted till the future because it's just like there was so much stuff because there's Feige, there's real world stuff, there's other scoopers. It was a crazy week, but that's what I love before we get into the plugs is just that we started this podcast, the whole network, in a time where that we started at. I always say the worst time. It's just so
we should have given maybe our review of Black Widow or our thoughts in our first podcast. That
well,
didn't
I know,
happen.
like it was like okay, it was looking good, but at the time that was when everything was really on hold. But now, because we have this and we have Falcon, all this stuff coming up, I love when we have these Feige press tours because he always does this. He's a smart guy, and we'll get into it. He always he drops not too much, but just a little to get people talking. And there's always kind of 1-2 nuggets which we're going to talk about that were some big ones. But
Mm-hmm.
I just love that we're in this we're in full promotion mode. We haven't had that. I was talking about that last week. We haven't had that with Marvel, really. We had New Mutants, but that was just like a far in the wind, to be honest. And I like New Mutants, but it was just kind of
Wow.
well, there wasn't much promotion behind it. It was like here
No.
it is. It's out there. And Hellstorm, we're not even accepting that. It's just like, but this is a full on
What is
MCU thing.
that?
And it's just very exciting. So, what else is very exciting is our lineup for Geek Ultimate Alliance. We have shows every day of the week, or as Greg would like to say, 7 days a week, Monday to Friday. 10 shows. Some of them are bi-weekly. If you want the entire schedule, go down the details below. But you got tons of stuff. Chris, I know you had a retro this week. What did you cover?
Yeah, we had a retro Tim Maroney. That was his second appearance on World's Finest True Believers. We looked at one of my favorite graphic novels, Dark Knight, a true Batman story, looking at Paul Dini's a little bit of his life, but basically focusing on his for those that don't know, he was mugged during the production of Mask of the Phantasm, and basically his coming to terms with his own demons and recovery of his life after that. It's really a outstanding story. So yeah, give it a listen, and definitely if you've never read it, highly recommend it. But yeah, Tim will be joining me later this month to record his third appearance that'll drop sometime in February.
I think you should check out his Twitter because he may or may not be teasing that. I thought I saw a tweet
That's not the
today
book.
and I went,
Not the book.
Okay.
No.
Well, then I don't know.
I think
So
he's
there
going
you
on.
go.
I know he's coming back onto the Batman book club, so it may be that, or maybe
Yeah.
something completely different. But yeah, Tim doesn't take much to talk to Tim to get him to do some Batman stuff. So.
Well, that's exciting. And like we said, every day of the week, World's Finest True Believers, DC Alliance, we got us on Wednesdays. Those shows record respectively the night before live, like we're doing now. Thursday is a nice triple threat between Slice of Film, Star Wars Alliance, and Power Rangers or Ranger Alliance. So you can check those all out. Friday, Super Civil Servants records live, and then it drops on the Saturday, and then it's also recorded as far as Superhero Discussions is put out on the Friday on the podcast feeds, and then the weekend is Weird Science, talking about all these great comic books right now. It's a great time. Their episode did really well because DC Future State is, whether you like it or you don't, it's a big talking point. So it's exciting to see, and I haven't read any, so I'm waiting till everybody. I've gone and talked to enough people that have read them and kind of cherry pick. I know I'm reading Batman. I know like that one and probably Harley Quinn, but the rest, it's an exciting, bold sort of thing. And then the other thing I wanted to throw to is you guys announced this on last night or today if you're listening to this for DC Alliance. But again, I'll throw to you. I know you just kind of did this last night, but with DC Alliance, you and Greg are going to be interviewing a special guest next week, and it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, Sean O'Connell, managing director of Cinema and Blend, the author of Release of Snyder Cut, the book detailing all the behind the scenes stuff and shenanigans that basically went on, and how that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
and how that we're gonna see that finally come to light. So yeah, it was great that he's making some time for us to come on, talk about it, ask us. I said it last night, and he says ask him anything. So definitely, and we're count on definitely the ending question, talking about a little Spider-Man book that he's writing. So count on that being asked.
That was the first thing. At first I said, oh great, that's awesome. And I said, you better try and ask him one thing about Spider-Man, because I'm just so curious about that, because he's talked about he's writing a Spider-Man book, but we don't know the exact angle. I'm not expecting him to give it up to us, but it's just it's exciting. But yeah, and again, like they said last night, that's all due to you, sir. Everybody, like whether it's Real Finance True Believers or this show, Chris works really hard, and that's his exclusive. He got that all worked up and everything like that. So that's all on you. So if you guys enjoy the interview and the content that come next week, thank Mr. Balga here, because it should be a good one. I'm
Mhm.
very excited. I might have to ask you guys a sneak peek for the questions because I'm very curious to see what you're going to ask. But
Yeah, we're hopefully going to meet sometime this weekend and just compare notes to figure out our must ask and our if we have time.
yeah. So, and then the last thing is Patreon. You can go support us there. $1 amount is just like a thank you, like what we're doing. And then $5 amount, you get stuff ad free, early, and exclusive. We had about 3 exclusives actually that went up last month. So, pretty good. We have a little mini one that went up this month. I know you and Clay might be doing something later on. I'm going to try this month to try and do something with Travis or
Mhm.
Katie and or both. I just have to wait on the rest of my month's schedule as far as work, but I got to do
Yeah.
one with Katie, and then me and Travis always like talking about some here and there and stuff like that. I'm sure we have to talk about something pretentious, right, Travis? We got to talk about something like that. So, but that's everything. So I think we should get
Yeah.
in this because we got a lot to go.
Yeah, we're going to start off with the big news that Mr.
Mhm.
Feige dropped in the sense of apparently there's going to be another Avengers movie with the X-Men in it. Just wanted to say that up front. Apparently he's still working on we're going to focus a lot on him talking about like X-Men coming in and the Avengers movie. No, we're not. Because those were 2 questions that were asked, and both Travis and I rolled our eyes that someone, got if that was a question being asked.
I just don't understand. This is to break the fourth wall, but like with your guys' interview with Sean next week, you guys showed me the questions, and I saw, hey, do you like DC and Marvel? I'd be like, what are you guys doing? Like, why are you asking this? Like, there's just some questions you don't need to ask. And like, Kevin, are we gonna get another Avengers movie? You know what? No, we decided we looked. Avengers is the biggest movie all time. We said, nah, screw it. We're not gonna ask. And I get it. And of course, like I clicked on the link and it was IGN. And I don't have a problem with IGN. They're a very successful website, but I was just like, I sometimes just feel like it's just such lowball stuff. And if you had even 15 minutes with Kevin Feige, I just don't know why you would ask, is there going to be another Avengers movie or
Are
something
you
about the
working on
X-Men?
the X-Men?
Yeah, yeah. I could understand there's some angles you could ask about the X-Men or certain things to try to get an idea of it, but just to ask like, when will we see the X-Men? Yeah. So it was funny, but I'm surprised this first topic that we got that he actually revealed, because if you looked at the question of the article, they didn't ask him some of this thing directly, but I think
Mhm.
he wanted to get people talking.
Yeah, to be fair, he was deflecting on it. He knows he's going to get that question. So I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that you're ever going to trip on Mr. Feige and say, "Hey, the X-Men are coming in 2 years," yeah, you're not going to get that.
No, no. Well, and
But
even look at Fantastic
but
Four. He was dead silent about it, and then all of a sudden it's a movie, right? So it's like same
yeah.
thing. X-Men literally next year could be like, yeah, and the X-Men are coming 2024, and he'd be
Mhm.
like, no, it's years away. But
But anyways, back to the reality of that. I knew I was going to get Travis with that one, considering yeah, he and I had the same opinion on on those questions. But anyways,
Mhm.
we've got like 3 big ones, but we're going to start off with what we consider to be probably the biggest one. Kevin Feige, wait for it, has confirmed that Deadpool 3 is in the MCU. It still will be rated R, and when it's filming. So this coming from Collider. This is coming directly from Collider. Their own Steve Weintraub, I believe, spoke with him
Weintraub
during
there.
Weintraub. Spoke with Kevin Feige as he's doing all these interviews in anticipation of WandaVision dropping this week. And the quote is, "It will be rated R, and we are working on a script right now, and Ryan's overseeing a script right now. It won't be filming this year. Ryan's very busy, very successful actor,
Hmm.
and we've got a number of things already announced that already have to be made. So it's exciting to begin. Again, it's very different type of character in the MCU, and Ryan is a force of nature, which is awesome to see him bring that character to life." That's right. We're going to say it again. Deadpool is in the MCU. It is going to be MCU's very first rated R movie. And Feige has never not praised what Ryan Reynolds has done with Deadpool. He's never been against it. He has never been a detractor of it. But I think what we have seen coming from Marvel with how they've established themselves and being bought by Disney, this seemed, next to bringing the Punisher into the MCU, seemed to be one of the biggest stretches, to us, and unbelievable at that point. Because even when it was announced, I mean, we knew Marvel was going to be making that third Deadpool movie, but we all said, it's still a stretch of them coming in. Maybe they're just kind of wrapping it up so that we could wrap up Deadpool, and then they can kind of gain it back on his own. But this this is just this gives me a lot of hope about other properties and gives me the idea that Kevin Feige and Disney are not afraid to do this and not fear that they're going to ostracize their audience.
Yeah, and this is where Mr. Hines is in the chat, and he said easiest decision for Kevin Feige, and you might be right on that. I'm still surprised. To let you know, I've been doing Geekverse for 5 years, and there's a joke. If you ever see me use the hashtag Travis told you, there was a joke on Geekverse that for about 2018, 2019, I was just having all these predictions, like Black Panther was going to be massive, and that was right. I predicted like the entire first half of Endgame, I was right. So I was like on a roll. So it's like a meme. We made this hashtag, and I was always saying, and I had talked about on Marvel Alliance, I think a few weeks ago, that I always said Deadpool wouldn't go to the MCU, it would come to him. And this is what I said about Foggy wanting to spin wheels, because the question, if you look at the article, was not, is Deadpool in the MCU? He didn't have to even say this yet. He didn't have to say Deadpool. He just
Not at all.
was asked, is it filming anything like that next year? It is interesting they said not filming next year, and he didn't even say, or not this year, and he didn't even say next year. So I feel like they're still figuring that part out. But I am shocked, because even someone like as Bob Iger, when they first bought Disney, said that would be separate. If you look at the very first meeting they had after they bought Fox, said, yeah, we'll be making Deadpool and stuff under the type of Fox, some sort of banner. So if they had even kind of alluded that if Deadpool is going to happen, it's going elsewhere. Obviously, that was almost 4 years ago now. Yeah, I think 3 years. So tons of things have changed. Obviously, just the world in general has changed. So I'm surprised, because it is, I'm happy in one sense, and I hope it does actually happen, because I do think everyone is warned that goes, I'll believe it when I see it, and I do agree, because it is a lot of big things. Because remember, that was the big joke too at Comic-Con when they were talking about Doctor Strange 2, and they're like, someone's like, it's gonna be rated R. He's like, no, it's gonna be PG-13, and you're gonna like it. And then months later, Scott Derrickson's gone, right? So it's like there is a sense of like, is this just word serves? How much is it actually MCU? But he has put it out there, and Feige doesn't just put stuff out there accidentally. He would, even if he said something like that, he would correct himself in the article and be like, oh, I meant in Marvel or something. He wouldn't just say in the MCU. Feige's been doing this so long. I've said this. He needs to run for office. The way he dodges questions, the way he answers things, he gives you an answer, but a non-answer at the same time. And I'm very intrigued. And the other reason you and I had talked about why they might wait is because I always thought they wanted to hit the X-Men first. And that's why I do think him not even saying they're filming next year, I still think that could be in the realm of possibility that, yeah, we're going to do Deadpool, but Ryan, we really want to do at least one X-Men first and establish mutants, because I do think it is a weird, unless he drops from a portal, I think it is a weird start for the MCU X-Men reign to start with Ryan Reynolds Deadpool. Some people might say, hey, that's the best way to do it. And maybe I just don't feel that's how they want to do it. But at the same point, I didn't think they'd do a rated R movie. And it's very interesting. And it because there is a line where it is easy money, sure, but you got to think of it on the whole, as far as all these movies are family movies. And I'm not trying to degrade them. I'm saying you could take, I'd say maybe like an 8-year-old, even a 6-year-old, depending on your kids, you could take them to this and not have to worry about huge sexualization. You hear shit, but they've not even dropped the F-bomb. They've been very careful. And this is where
which
this
a lot
is
of
a
times
line.
they can, which a lot of times they can do in their PG-13 movies. They can get
Yep.
one. So
they could easily get one, and they haven't done that yet, because I've always felt they want to keep that Disney gloss on it. And there is a Disney gloss on it, but it works. It's a big franchise, and not everything has to be rated R. So this is it. I don't want to say they're walking on a tightrope, because they're very smart and I trust them, but it is something new. Where could this backfire eventually? How do you do this? And how do you, like, if Deadpool's in the MCU and he's rated R and he's in a crossover, I don't think he could be rated R. They're not going to make an Avengers movie rated R, right? So is he just excluded from a lot of these big events? Is he kind of cut off by the knees in those movies? Like, you can't. I don't know. It's smart, but I still thought they were gonna give him one more movie and figure it out. But what do you think as far as the family dynamic of these? All these characters are for families. They are at Disney parks. They are people you can look up to. Deadpool, not necessarily someone you want to look up to, and that's the thing. Where what do they do?
I think again it goes back to what we said a lot of times, especially when we talk about, this conversation a lot of times comes up with DC a lot in treating the audience like that they're not an idiot, in the sense of, we can understand like, hey, guess what? Hey, Spider-Man Multiverse Madness. Hey, guess what? There's three other Spider-Man. They can understand the idea very simply of a multiverse existing. They can understand that, okay, not everyone's squeaky clean in the world. I mean, look at what look what we're dealing with, at least in the United States.
Yeah.
It's not one of these things that is so for realm bound on possibility. Now, yeah, I saw in the chat, I believe it was, can't remember who said it. The how they did not let him say a Disney joke or something like that. Okay, that's, oh, I'll give them that. It's not gonna be full reign at that point. But again, if it's rated R, like with everything, there's certain lines that can and can't be crossed at that point. Even Ryan's gone on record about a couple of things that they thought about doing and never, or shot and never made it to film just because it got a little too extreme. But it was just fun to do. But I think that, again, you can still have that MCU logo, and just like with everything, hey, guess what? How many different films do we have of versions of Batman? You can still watch, Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. It's a very different than watching Batman Returns, or The
Hmm.
Dark Knight. So you can still have people in segments and do that. So Deadpool's just a different character that you can expand on in different ways, but I like that they're still keeping it. Like you said, I think it's very good to note that they did not put a time of when they're going to start it necessarily. We can make our inferences saying that probably Deadpool's a Phase 5 film, But
Yeah,
what
I
they
think so.
didn't, but what they didn't say, and the question wasn't necessarily asked, was that may be his first film. It does not mean we may not see Deadpool before then.
Well, and this is the thing. I agree with that, but then what do you do with him if he is rated R in his own movies? What do you do with him in the crossovers? Then, in your opinion, like, what do you do? Because everyone's already, and I agree with it. It's like you got to do the Deadpool Spider-Man, then you have to. But it's like the second you do put Spider-Man in something that is catered to a different audience, right? I think it's different if he is in a Deadpool movie and it's like a cameo and they don't advertise it. That's fine. But if it's literally like, hey, it's a Spider-Man 4, let's say, and Deadpool's in there and they're up to some shenanigans stuff like that, either I feel like Deadpool, like I said, has to be cut off from the knees, and that movie doesn't swear, and I feel like that could turn some of the older audience off, like, oh, they neutered him in this movie. But then let's say if Spider-Man is advertised for Deadpool movie and a kid goes, hey, I want to see that. A 6-year-old says, I want to see it. I know it's up to the parent, but is that when parents start to not rebel, but just is there a bit more of like, hey, this used to be this thing that my kids were safe to watch. And now it's like same thing, like Disney Plus, they're going to have, for you guys, they're putting most of that adult stuff on Hulu. For us, we have Disney Star coming. What happens with this Deadpool movie if it's in the MCU and it's all connected? Is it just, I guess it's like the Spider-Man movies, it's just not on Disney Plus then, in the
Yeah,
natural sense?
I think in a sense, kind of like you said, you have Disney Plus. I think that they are going to be toying around with it, even though they have majority ownership of Hulu, and yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
can do that. But I think, again, Disney's branding, they're not going to. I don't believe, in its case in point, they've put the X-Men in the Legends category, the Legacy
Yeah.
category. So I don't see them moving it out because it's their brand at that point. So to your point, this is going to have to be a interesting dance they're going to have to do of where to fit Deadpool in. Yes, would we love to see Deadpool and Spider-Man together? Great. But I think one thing we can say about, Feige's reign in the MCU is preserving the integrity of the characters in the sense of who they are represented. If it's going to be a detriment to the character of putting Deadpool in and it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be the Deadpool that people like, I don't want to see him in there at that point. I'd rather him be used somewhere else that you can give him, if you're going to cut him off a little bit, don't like destroy the character. Because again, if Spider-Man is supposed to be the character itself is supposed to be quote unquote family friendly in a sense, it makes it very difficult to make that combination. It's easier to put Daredevil and Spider-Man
Oh
together
yeah.
versus Deadpool and Spider-Man. Not again, we know Deadpool and Spider-Man have been in the comics, but that's different
Mm-hmm.
at that point. We got to understand that movies versus comics, there's certain things you can and can't do.
And I will say this, and I know, I think, let's see, Tony was saying about people have pitched this before, like if he's in a PG-13 movie, you can bleep him and make it part of the joke.
Yeah, I
I
thought
get
about
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. And I also still think that there is a huge slant to the comic books. We've talked about this before, though, that most of the Deadpool comics aren't actually rated R. They imply a lot of things, but you don't actually see a lot of nudity. They always bleep out the swear words. So it's like when people have this idea. So I think there is still a way to do it. It's just like we said, it's an interesting dance. I guess the other part I'm interested in is when we had heard about this news before, we kind of had assumed in the way it was almost pitched that it was like maybe or maybe not in the MCU, but it sounded almost like more like it's going to be its own thing. If it
Mhm.
is in the MCU, I wonder how much that like strengthens the chances of him appearing in Multiverse of Madness, just because how do you like what do you because to me when it's its own separate thing, it's like okay, we're gonna carry on with like Vanessa and some of these characters and he's doing his own separate adventure. But if it's in the MCU, do they just it's kind of what we've talked about before, Charlie Cox, we're gonna talk about Kristen Ritter. Do you think they adopt some of that over and carry it, or do you think they just do somehow a clean slate and forget everything you know about Deadpool other than you love Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and he's in this universe now, like J.K. Simmons, right? We pretty much know unless Multiverse Madness does something that he's not playing Tobey Maguire's
Mhm.
JK. He's just playing JK, and it's like this actor's great.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. What do you do with this situation? Because they have a whole world set up over there, the Colossus and Teenage Warhead and all that stuff.
I think that's even easier with Deadpool because everything's a breaking of the fourth wall with him.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he can make fun of it. He can joke around. He's from all these. He's seen different universes at that point. I think it's very now open for definitely a cameo in Multiverse of Madness. Is why I think that it's very easy, even though he's very busy. That's a day, 2 day shoot, maybe for him to jump in, do the
Easily.
cost.
And he doesn't
So
even have
it's
to
not.
be there. We've seen people before shoot separately on a location somewhere and then they just add that scene in the movie, like Ezra Miller or Flash, right? Like he doesn't even have to like take a trip down. They could keep very secret if they wanted
Mhm.
to.
They wanted to, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's the quickest way to do it at that point,
He
just
could
to
have shot
have.
it when he had that meeting. Remember he had that meeting? Like he
Yep.
could have shot it that day and we don't even know.
We're gonna do that, and so it's one of those things that I think the other thing this opens us up to for Marvel is we have Blade hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what Blade was going to be rated at this point, but this makes me even more excited at the possibility that we get a rated R Blade movie in the MCU. This opens up the idea of the Marvel Knights side of the MCU, and I think it's again treating the audience like they who they are at that point, saying, "Hey, it's not necessarily saying these characters can't exist in like a Avengers type of movie. You can still have them there, but again, you can still have you're catering to all different parts of your audience, and I like that Marvel, again, like we're saying with WandaVision and all the stuff, they're getting really experimental with that stuff. So this is a nice progression to say, hey, why don't we go with an established property that has proven successful with rated R? Let's lean into it, see what it does, see what we can do that still fits our brand, and this leads it to other opportunities.
And Feige, he like I was gonna say he's not an idiot, but he's clearly not an idiot. He's like probably if you crank the numbers, I'm not sure as far as producer, but he either has to be in the top 5 or now because I know like there's people like Kathleen Kennedy and some of those people out there, but he has to be at least in the top 10, probably top 5 most
Mhm.
successful producers. And I guarantee you, when his career over, I think he will be number 1 if you look at that entire MCU in the box office total. And I think like we were talking about earlier with Fox and like bring up the Disney joke and stuff like that, that could easily just been like they want to control the narrative of their films, and
Mhm.
that's why you could see a Disney joke. And I think there's lots of stuff that like I don't like I was gonna say this as a fact or fiction for next week, but I'm just gonna say it
All
now just
right.
because like it's just so timely. It's just like I feel like Kevin Feige has to appear in this Deadpool movie. I really do. I feel like because I would like the scene I envision. I don't think they would do this, but the scene I envision is him meeting with Deadpool and he sits down like we're gonna bring in the MCU, but you
Mhm.
can't swear, you can't do any of this stuff, and Deadpool just kills him, like outright shoots him or something like that. Like I want, and that's how I think. Like I think it's
Yeah.
different when it's another studio's making fun of you than when you're making fun of yourself. Because if someone else says, I could say the same joke about myself, and if someone else says, I might be like, like why'd they say it or why that type of tone? But if you say it, you know exactly what you mean by it and the tone, and it's coming from you, and it even looks a little better as far as like, oh look, they're making fun of themselves. So I feel like that's not going to be an issue. I think there's going to be tons of Disney and so like I think Kevin Feige to me has to appear in some way, just because I just think it would be such a fourth wall breaker. But he's also said in the past, like he full on went out there and said, yeah, the Downey death and Endgame, like Logan was the inspiration for that. He saw that and went, wow, that's
Yeah.
great. You know, and so he's given credit to other comic franchise when it is with Blade. I really want to know. That's why I'm excited to hopefully get dates for Deadpool and Blade somewhere down the line, which we have not gotten, because I was always wondering, is Deadpool going to be used as the guinea pig before they shoot Blade? But it sounds like to me, not sounds like, but if you're looking at timeline, it's looking like Deadpool and Blade are getting pretty close to each other as far as like shooting and releasing. So we don't know for
Yeah.
sure, but I thought, okay, what if they do Deadpool and let's say there is a backlash and it doesn't work and they go, you know what, this isn't actually good with the MCU brand. We'll do Blade, but we got to bring down that violence, bring down that tone. Or if it works, just go, hey, people figured it out. Families weren't too mad at it. Let's go. But if they're close, you can't do that. But yeah, Blade, I understand. I still think there is a version you could do PG-13 Blade, but it is difficult when you get into vampires and bloodsuckers and you want to again you could CGI them so the animations like and the kills aren't that bad, but it's exactly what you talked about. One thing, all these, whatever, you don't have to read reviews of WandaVision before, do whatever you want, but lots of reviews have said one thing, that the first few episodes are at least like they're very comedic and like on purpose very comedic, so it's like what you see in that show, it's even weirder when you get into the episode. We're going to talk about some stuff later, but I think that's one good thing that Endgame did afford Feige is they already trusted him. They completely trust him now. And I feel like how much he wants to get weird or rated R, it'll work. And I think my last point on this is they have to do this because you have to evolve. They could easily do like another phase of 3 films or whatever, 10 films, and have them similar and just build up to a big event. But eventually the audience will tire. They will go, that's when the
Yeah.
superhero fatigue will happen. And that's what was always my worry about them buying Fox is, yeah, not all the Fox movies was great, but Deadpool, Logan, First Class, stuff like that, they're very different. And that's what you want. And that's where WandaVision, I think there's a chance it's lots of people. I've said this before. I've watched clips of the show because out of interest, and I think there's gonna be tons of people that hate this. There's gonna be people that go like, "This is just too weird for me," but it's you can't say they're not trying to be different, which I think the MCU has gotten the most complaints about is, oh, they're just so white bread. They do the same thing over and over. If they do a Deadpool, that's radar. This WandaVision show, if they do a Blade, that's radar. This is them showing, hey, we have carte blanche to kind of do what we want now. And that's very exciting for me as like a comic book fan and a movie fan to see, okay, we're changing up because like I said, I love that DC has Joker over there. I love that we have all these, I love Birds of Prey. So I love the variety we have and I want Marvel to have the same. And it looks like they're doing that. And like I said, I want to wait still till we have set footage that the film is actually happening, Deadpool 3, and it is rated R, but it's exciting times.
Yeah, I mean, we say that we want to wait till set footage and stuff like that, but again, I Marvel and Feige have not been ones to kind of say something's happening and then kind of backpedal.
Other than Inhumans.
They pretty much have a good. Well, that still happened. It just was bad.
Well, no, remember it was supposed to be a movie originally.
Yeah, but I mean, like again, we just never. It saw the light of day. We just never. It's not one of these things that it's so good. You're right. I like it. You brought up like again, Blade is being shopping. We don't know who the screen. I don't think we know who the screenwriter is attached to. Blade.
No
at this
screenwriter,
point.
no director. We just know it's Mahershala.
Yeah, and so the fact that I think if they are writing it, they found it and they just haven't announced it, and Ryan's in the middle of writing it with they're the two directors of it, or
yeah,
the directors, or are they the writers?
I think it was a story like they are writing set to direct. I think it was one of those where it's like,
okay,
if it works out, the sisters from Bob's Burgers, right? That was what it was.
Yeah, Bob's Burgers. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it was like, like the ideas for them to direct, but you never know. So
yeah, and I would say that'd be another good get at that point to let them lead this along the way, because again, Ryan signed off on them. He liked their pitch. Again, this is his baby, and so he's not gonna, whatever Feige pitched, whatever they got him, he agreed to at that point. there's compromises that obviously are met with deals, but he is not one to make too many compromises that he doesn't feel appropriate. So he's
Whoa.
having fun with this. He even tweeted out saying, I said I showed him Spider-Man 1 and 2 and said it was Deadpool 3."
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what I found very interesting about that quote is like this like hopefully writers and directors are all fine with it, but like Kevin Feige says Ryan Reynolds is overseeing this movie. You know, not the writers, not the directors, like this, and he has every right to. He produced the last two. He had a big reason getting through it, and but he is like this is his baby, and I think he knows. And I think Reynolds and he'll get a team, and that's why some people have said like, oh, why aren't the original writers there? Maybe they didn't want to do that, but he maybe felt, you know what, I think there's a way we could make this work in the MCU. I just got to find someone that agrees with me or sees kind of similar. And that's where these sisters maybe come in as well. But it is very much his, I think it sounds like it's very much his project. The way he talks about him, which it's funny because they haven't really worked together, is the same way he would talk about a Downey, you know, of like, yeah, true Iron, like, it's the same way as like Shane Black got that gig because he's a great director, but he's also was really close with Downey. The same way like Tom Cruise, he picks his directors. It's the other way around. It's not them coming to him. He goes and say, "You're going to direct Mission Impossible." So I think Reynolds is very much like that, and it's good to see that though, because I like that. Hopefully that's the sign, because that was always my worry of like, could you get a butting head situation where Fox kind of let Reynolds not do what he wanted, but kind of gave him a bit more freedom where the MCU very boxed in. But Tony asked, with it being a radar film, do you think this indication of Moon Knight show will have an edge like Daredevil? It's tough because like we talked about before, I think it'll be edgier, but I don't think it'll be like Kingpin crashing a guy's head in with a door. Like I don't think it'll be like that, or there's like some sex scenes they have in there. I think that it'll be edgier, but that's where we talked about earlier. This Deadpool film doesn't end up on Disney Plus, even if it's MCU. If it's in the, let's say it's called the Doom Saga, the next saga. If it's in that, you would have that included right in this like 23 films in Doom Saga. But if it's like, but Deadpool can't be on Disney Plus, same thing. What do they do? So I think Moon Knight will be edgier, but I don't think it will be as edgy as Daredevil. And like I said, Deadpool, maybe they will have to just have a parental lock on this one MCU movie. Like everything else works, but if you want to watch this one, you got to get the agreement from your parents.
But that's so simple. I mean, it's easy as that. You know, it's in, but because we acknowledge it's rated R, but guess what? It's as simple as putting a lock on it at that point, and it's up to the parent. You know, be the parent, set the lock, and not and be and again treat people like people. You know, we make decisions. We want to watch it. We don't want to watch it. We make decisions. Just like when people say you don't like something, guess what? As George Carlin said, you have two knobs on it, and one of them turns the volume down, and guess what? The other one does, turns it off.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, exactly. And it will be interesting to see. And then Heinz brought up, says if Deadpool made as much as it did over at the Fox, or as much as it did with Fox being a mess, how much would it do with Disney? Tough because COVID, because we don't know in the future what like box office will be. But I just think I agree with him there. Like the marketing machine of Disney and Deadpool together could be lots of fun. And like I said, if they really want to go into it, there's like please give Ryan Reynolds one TV spot with like a Mickey Mouse type of logo or something. Like if they really wanted to, if they said, hey, and I feel like they have to do this, and hopefully Reynolds is like this saying, if you really want this to be like super successful, I'd understand not having the complete handcuffs off, but you got to let me do some stuff with Disney and everything. And I think we'll see something like that. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time if it all goes down.
And again, I'm still just in amazement that one of the few things we could say, like, I just don't think it's going to happen. It's just not a thing. Guess what? They surprised us, and they're willing to take that chance. So that screams that gives me a lot more confidence that, again, Feige is not just going to take it and blow everything up. You know, so.
Hey, but at the same time, I will freely admit the same way before this cast, you asked me, hey, the Packers making it to Super Bowl. I went, I don't think so. I'm not saying that about the story, but I still have a little bit of like, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm waiting for that Edgar Wright press release of, it didn't work out, you know, and I don't think it will happen, but there's still to me a percentage of, you never know, you know, like even like this past year, it wasn't as big a deal, but we did lose Scott Derrickson. He's alive. We lost him as a director.
And you got to be careful with it. Lost him. What?
Yeah. He left the MCU, and what was that tweet? We were off when he tweeted out, but he said, I didn't want to make a movie that I didn't feel creatively was my own. And that's perfectly fine. I get that as a director. That's great. And I think Deadpool's such a big character and Ryan Reynolds such a big character, they will find a way to, like you said, compensate. But I still see that still potential future as far as something comes out and go, hey, it just didn't work out, or blah blah blah, or they do something and then Deadpool, or they just keep doing the, oh, we're both busy, and it never happens. But I think if you had to ask me, I think it will. But I would never be surprised if I see that happen. You know, it's like the same way as like when I'm watching Black Widow and they say, you know, the Thunderbolts, we could put this team together. I'm not gonna be surprised. I kind of know what's happening, but yeah. So I hope it happens, and I like that at least they're putting it out there. They're showing they want to go down that route. So,
and my one thing to counter that, again, you're right. Anything can happen. They can go. The one thing is there's a difference between Derrickson and Ryan Reynolds.
Absolutely.
In the sense of that is someone they want to be in business. Not saying they don't want to be in business with Derrickson. They want, it's more of a want, you have more positive outcomes still being in business with Ryan Reynolds than you do Derrickson. Like there's a lot more public perception of more people being on your side.
I was just about to say that as well too. Like Ed Wright, of course he has his fans, but it's like, okay, they win. Fans are disappointed, whatever.
But
Same
hey,
thing
I'll take Greg's point of view and saying, go out in the street and ask who Edgar Wright is. You know?
Oh yeah, but that's where I'm agreeing with you as far as those other directors. You lose them for a week. It's like, oh, this sucks, but the people move on. You lose Reynolds, that's egg on the face for Marvel, because that people won't look at it at Reynolds. Even if Reynolds was the diva and wouldn't do this in the public, everyone will put that on Disney and Feige and go, well, look, they can't play ball. Look, they don't want to be creative. And with Ryan Reynolds having all this love as his fan favorite, it would kind of be like, for some reason, if before Infinity War or Tony or Downey and him had a falling out, and it's like, well, how'd you let this happen? And that's where I agree with you, and you are right. And that's why I would say, if I think it's happening, I would say yes, because if they lose Reynolds, that is like the equivalent to how people keep always talking about, like, they want more Affleck, they want HBO Max series. It would be that for Marvel. It would be, how did you let Reynolds go? You made a big mistake. And I think it would be an elephant in the room all the time. So I agree with you. Even and they hate each other, and they break up. I think it will happen. But I think they're both also, just to cut down to brass tacks, they just both know that together they make a lot of money. And I think that all that rises all ships. So I think that, like, they both know that, hey, let's just figure this out and we can go along, and hopefully they get along. And like I said, I'm excited for if it happens. The press tour, I think it's just going to be marketing. It's just going to be just through the roof and tons of fun. And yeah.
But yeah, do you want to hit our next story, or do you want to take our first ad break?
We'll take our first ad break, because I think the next story we'll have to talk a little bit longer about. But as you know, we are part of Geek Ultimate Alliance Network, and these ads help support and grow the channel. As we always said, we don't know what ads you're going to get. I was happy this week. I got a Geico ad, I got a Honda ad, I got a bunch of different stuff. It was all over the place, but these help grow the channel. They help support everything, like I just said, but sometimes they can be a little bit louder, and we don't know, and we don't get to pick what they are through our providers. So we're about to throw to an ad break, and then we are going to talk about some Punisher. So we'll be right back. And we're back.
Boom shakalaka, we're back. So boom goes the dynamite.
Nothing happened.
Yes, exactly. So this was going to be our main topic, but again, Feige spoke, and Feige's going to speak a lot more in this show. So, but we, Travis and I, certain things can't be, it's like the elephant in the room. We've got to acknowledge it. We got to talk about this. And this became kind of a story with what occurred with, and I'm going to call it the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, because I'm sorry, that's what it is. I'm sorry if you listening, you disagree. We're not going to spend necessarily getting into the politics of the insurrection itself, but, this idea of what should Marvel do with the Punisher moving forward of this, and kind of how this came about. And it's been coming out for a while, since I want to say for the last couple of years, but particularly this summer it became a big forefront, because we saw images from, people going against the Black Lives Matter movement with the Punisher symbol on it. We saw a number of police fighting against peaceful protesters with the symbol on it. There were number of the rioters in the U.S. Capitol with the Punisher symbol and things like that. So this has not been it's not an old topic, but I think with what occurred at the Capitol, this finally said, okay, this became a number of articles came out, and there was one definitely that has kind of influenced a little bit of this discussion, was put out by Sci-Fi, entitled "What Should Marvel Do with the Punisher?" or Marvel should ditch the Punisher. At that point, I think you and I will have very similar views on this. But I'll state up. Well, we can just kind of discuss it. Punisher has been a character, introduced in 1974 in the Amazing Spider-Man 129. It has been a controversial character almost since day one.
Yeah.
And I don't think the creation of the Punisher has ever been something that Marvel is ever signing off on what he does and how he does it. It is at the essence of it is a social commentary about what happens of a failure of a system to a person.
Yeah, I know you laid the groundwork out perfectly as far as this is not the first time we've heard this, and it's not going to be the last time, especially with
Mm-hmm.
social media growing and trends like that. And I'm going to read when we kind of get near the end of this conversation, we put out the question of what do you think about this? And that's what I want to say that we may, I don't know what side of the fence you're on when you're listening to this, but we may disagree with you, but that's not condemning your opinion or anything
Yeah.
like that. We want you to know, and same thing after this episode. I was hoping someone on the other side would reach out, but most people were kind of similar to us. But if you're on the side of, I'll personally state that I am not for the banning of the logo and the character, and I'll get that in a second. But if you're on that other side as well, as long as it's respectful and well written, if you make a typo, that's fine because I make a typo every day. But it's that it's just a conversation because at the end of the day, it is a fictional character, and I am on the
insert Ben Affleck meme from Chasing
yes.
Amy. We're talking about fictional
Yeah,
characters.
yeah, exactly. Who maybe one day we can see his Daredevil. No, that's not gonna happen. But it's tough because what I always go back to is, and it maybe just left a big impression on me, is Scream. And the biggest quote to me that lots of people use, and I agree with it, is Billy. He's the character. Spoilers for the classic movie Scream. If you've not watched it, literally pause this and go watch it. It's maybe the greatest horror
Number
movie of all
5's
time.
coming.
Yeah. Oh boy. I don't know if that was needed, but that's fine. We're getting fifth one. IP. So, but with Billy, spoilers, the killer says Sid says you've seen one too many movies, and he says movies don't create psychopaths; they just make them more creative. And I've always agreed with that as the people that have done these, in my opinion, these domestic terrorists, they we're going to do this no matter what. And they did not read a Punisher comic book or watch a TV show and then go, you know what, that's going to make me storm the Capitol. And that's where it's tough because let's say we did live in this world where next week Marvel said, Frank Castle's done as a character, that logo is done. And if we see that logo, we're going to tear it down everywhere. Okay, that's fine. We could live in that world. I don't want to live in that world, but we could. The next time this happens, what stops them from wearing a Captain America logo? What stops them from wearing a Batman logo? Because it's just, and they can look at it as, yeah, they do. And that's the way Frank Castle just gets that logo because he is affiliated with the army and he's a very violent character and he's standing up for something. Now, what people kind of misunderstood is I think everyone wearing this logo using in these terms would be the people that Frank Castle would be wanting to take down or wanting to do justice for. It's the same way as they've done this and they've tackled this in the past. And I wonder if Marvel will tackle this again. Is there is a comic strip where this was around the time where cops were starting to wear the logo, which is not a good thing because Punisher, he doesn't take prisoners in. He just kills. That's not what you want. You don't want
that. I've got that panel up here right now.
Yeah, and you don't want I'm somebody, and we're not going to go down that route. I do believe in the death penalty, but I don't believe in it without a judge, a jury, lawyers, and things like that. There's a system to it, and that's where Frank Castle's wrong. Is you can't just go and take this person's life. And with this panel, he talks like you got to be better. He even says, Scott, like you got to be better than me. You're not what I should be. I'm not a hero. And the same about Frank Castle. He knows that he is a bit more on, not a bit. He is on the darker side. He's on the wrong path, but he's unfortunately a sick man because the system failed him. A lot of bad things happened to him. Yeah. And I think with what they should do in the future is something similar to this is address it in a comic book but it won't go away and it will never go away. And the logo, if they want to try and steer away from, I'm never going to say I don't understand because I get where they're coming from. I have a problem with people saying Frank Castle should go away because to me, that is a classic character. He stands for something. And to me, that would just be a step too far. And I still even think the logo is a step too far, but I just think that character is so enriched in history and it does have a moral lesson. It does have something of how any person can go down the wrong path. But sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah. I mean, in that comes from, it was actually a issue trying to figure out what I written down. Yeah. This was from July 2019, Punisher number 13 by Matthew Rosenberg. He sees the the cop with the symbol on his car, and he tears it up and he said, I'll say
Yeah.
this once, we're not on the same side. You took an oath to uphold the law and help people. I gave all that up a long time ago. You don't do what I do. Nobody does. You boys need a role model. His name is Captain America, and he'd be happy to have you. But the next thing was even more interesting. It was like, who the hell do you think you are? Like it or not, you started something. You showed how it's done. Now you don't like others following your example. Too bad, tough guy. He said, if I find out you are trying to do what I do, I'll come for you next. And the other cop back,
Mm.
careful what you say here, Castle. Starting to sound a lot like a threat. And he leaves saying it was.
Yeah. And that's where I think I agree with you that they should do something like that down the line. But at the end of the day, I don't think it will matter as the same way. Like I said, if you could find me one person there that was not going to do that with either the Punisher existing or not, I would say you're lying because those people chose to do these things and they just put the Punisher logo on because they
Yeah.
just thought it was cool and badass. And I'm being like Frank Castle. They're a bunch of misguided people. And we earlier were talking about it. John Berthnall put out the same thing that I'm saying about misguided people. They don't understand. And yes, the Punisher is a very layered character. He is on the dark side. And there is a case of people have, I get the argument. People say if he's a villain, I understand that. But then that's the same point as like there's a point to that story, you know, and but it's the same way as like people don't talk about it, but like at both we've seen it at Black Lives Matter and this, there was like a guy dressed up as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, but like people don't make a big deal about that because you know the Joker is just kind of fun and he's out there and like he's already a villain, but it's just like
Fun.
well yeah exactly fun yeah, but like Frank Castle, it's just I don't think if you ban this logo, it doesn't stop anything. That's my main thing. Is it doesn't stop anything. It's just another thing that shows some people that were misguided. One, like I said, if all the logos didn't exist, they'd be wearing something else. And then what do they do next? You just ban everything?
Yeah, I mean, I this is where I'll say exactly. I agree with you what you're saying fully, and that is my take on on this character too. You know, getting rid of the Punisher, getting rid of the symbol is not the problem. This is a more deep seated problem that you and I, Travis, are not going to solve in this episode, and it's a much
Tonight,
longer.
we're
Yeah,
solving
tonight,
it.
and it's definitely going to involve a lot more people and a
Yes.
massive cultural shift. There's a reason this is happening, at least in not just my country, but in other countries around the world in different ways. There are many segments of the population that have felt that they have been ignored, basically ignored and stepped all over upon, whether their feelings are valid or invalid, or they're based around fake news or anything like that, whatever you want to call it. That's a whole different discussion, and I'm not getting into that today. But this is where this all stems from. But to just get rid of the Punisher, to just get rid of the symbol, is not necessarily Marvel solving the problem, in the sense of it is their IP. It is their trademark. There are some things that article went into, stronger trademark enforcement. Oh, they can just get tougher trademark enforcement and come down on people. Okay, have you seen some of the people? They're not
Yeah.
necessarily running a corporation necessarily. They have their ways. You're
You
not gonna
think
you're not gonna sue Mom and Pop Joe who are living in different ways, just creating it on their own. That's not gonna be the issue.
Yeah, you think before they rioted, they contacted Marvel PR and be like, "Hey, I'm printing this Punisher logo, and I just want to know, can I put it on my bulletproof vest?" No, they would just do it and bring it with them. And that's where
Yeah.
it's like, I agree, definitely, you be as strict as possible with it. You could do that, but you can't just say like, "Oh, look, it's out there. They really screwed up. They
Yep.
dropped the ball." It's like, no, anybody with like a graphic design, like picture T-shirt design place that's low key that they know someone
Mhm.
could print it. There's so many. There's
Yeah.
even stuff on like T Public is like you catch it all the time. People that like get caught with like a copyright. It's like, hey, that's something, but for weeks they could be selling something that's not theirs. It is a very tough thing to do, especially with the
It,
internet nowadays.
Yeah, and so the other idea, do you bench the character? Again, you could, but it's
Mhm.
just like, and they went into different things, like different characters, like Luke Cage wasn't around for a while, and Iceman. But it's like he brought up the article brought up those examples. It's like they were benched, but I don't think it necessarily was because of issues like this. It was just because they couldn't create any more stories. I
Yeah.
think there's still a lot of room, and I think what we just read from that one in 2019 shows what you can do with the character and lean into that even harder at that point. I know you had said that, I would agree. Most of the people probably did not read what read a Punisher comic, I think some see the essence of it, either see the movies and kind of take that idea of, I have been wronged by the system.
Yeah,
I have been
rebel.
wronged, and I view them as the ones who should be taken down. And so they take that and they twist it at their own. We see it every day in different ways. So it's an idea that you're also Marvel taking back the character and not saying like changing the costume. Yeah, you can change the costume and go the complete wrong direction like they're doing with Spider-Man, in my opinion. But hey, we'll I don't think we should go that extreme at that point, because at some point Spider-Man's going back to his red and blue costume at that point. This is temporary. I mean, how many different costumes, and that's what makes Spider-Man cool. You have all these costumes temporarily.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and
But
same thing like Batman right now. They have that with like, I just saw 2 images of the next Batman. It's like, that's just what you do. But even if Frank Castle just donned completely black, that skull is always going to be synonymous. It would take, I think, another 80 years. Let's say if they said today, no more Punisher logo ever on the Punisher again. I think it would take until you and I are dead past that for people to stop thinking of the logo with that character, because that's where you're always going to look at debut panels unless they just wash it away. And this is speaking from personal experience of, I'm a big wrestling fan. If people don't know, Chris Benoit was a very popular wrestler. He had a psychotic break and he took his family. Now, what WWE did after that, they took everything and washed him out of it. He's not in these videos, everything like that. People don't, and it's only been like 2 decades, but people haven't forgotten about him. People haven't forgot about where he was, because like, unfortunately, he's rooted in a lot of that company's biggest moments. And that's where it's just like, and that's where it's a reverse of, I don't think Frank Castle's that, but you could never, that would get to a very scary place if they were like discontinuing and burning, like, and I don't think that's not a healthy thing to do. It's the same thing I agree with like Warner Max or Warner Bros. Did when HBO Max launched, when there were certain movies that had bad racial things, but they put a sticker in front of it. Yeah, and Disney Plus, and they put it Disney Plus sometimes like, don't even show that, but like this, but like, I agree with put this up and say, hey, this was a part of the times. It's learned, like, give the whole history lesson, because if you just ignore it, I think that sometimes inflates the problem as well. And I think with Frank Castle, it is difficult. And I think we've talked about this a few times, and we talked about this with Brent, and that's where I've always said that I still think when we get to the movie side, that's why I feel like they might just punt and go to Cosmic Ghost Rider, because you kind of get that two of both worlds as far as, you have that character, he's very spacey, but then they kind of avoid it. And maybe one day he could be regular Frank Castle and stuff like that. But the other thing I wanted to shout out was, in my opinion, the 2 greatest comic book shows of all time are Daredevil on Netflix and HBO's Watchmen. Watchmen is spectacular. Look at what they do with Rorschach's character. If you were to talk to Rorschach, the character, I don't think he would want this racist, violently charged mob creating their own, justice. No. But they get his manifesto, they read it, they take it the wrong way, and they create this whole Rorschach cult around this guy who was trying his best. He was, out of all the characters in Watchmen, is he a psychotic guy? Yes, but he was trying his best to. Manhattan was fine with all these millions of people murdered. He was the only one to be like, hey, maybe this isn't cool. But now in that world, he's like the worst villain of them all, because this cult took what his book was and read it the wrong way. They took the wrong messaging from it, and that's what it became. And that's very similar. And if you haven't seen HBO Watchmen, watch that. That's not like one of the main plots, but they covered a little bit. And that's where I kind of feel like that's where something like this is. I've seen ideas like, what happens if you almost did a real life sort of situation, a comic book where Frank Castle's at home, he's watching this, and like the cops thing, he sees a bunch of criminals like this, or a similar comic book world situation where he sees a bunch of people wearing his skull. What does he do? Yeah, of course he's going to go out there and punch and say stuff, but like emotionally, mentally, how does he deal with that? And does he go, okay, how do I put out there that what I'm doing is wrong, but it's not this level, and it's not, you are also down a wrong path? And I think there is great storytelling, but now we're in a tricky situation, because it is Disney, and we talk about Deadpool being rated R, but Punisher is a much more different type of Disney. That is like Dexter, that is serial killer violence, very touchy subject.
I agree, and I know a few people are putting some things in the chat, and we're not ignoring you. So if you got some opinion, we're definitely going to read them in a little bit at that point. So definitely put those in there, so we're not ignoring you.
Joe, Watchmen's been out over a year, and I didn't spoil anything. It's literally the previews. You see a bunch of weird guys with Rorschach masks chanting. You can't look at them and be like, those are probably the good guys. They're not good guys. First episode, but get on it. It is a fantastic
Yeah.
show. It is just
Yeah.
oh.
When you said that, if we keep on saying getting rid of the character and getting rid of the symbol, a couple of things I equate it to, and it's not necessarily they're not on the same level. So I'm just using it as
Mhm.
historical precedent. Tearing down, I understand when people are tearing down Confederate statues because of the symbol they represent, and another side of it, and I've heard friends of mine that are African American. They have a very long history, so are very, very tied to it. And I heard a number of them, and I thought about it this way. Tell it to me, it's like, I don't want it to be torn down, and here's why. I want the acknowledgement that this happened. Tearing
Mhm.
it down, I get what they're doing. They said, I totally understand what they're doing it, but this is the history that is painful to my people and it's a painful thing, but it happened. And I need it to be acknowledged that this happened. I know why the erecting of these Confederate statues were meant to be a subversion of what the victory of the victory over the South. It was meant to be a subversion. However, a number of people interpret. I said that is a very interesting way of interpreting it. It's also tearing down the what's left of the concentration camps.
Yes.
It is an acknowledgement of the terrible, horrible history that occurred at that moment in time. And again, I see both sides, but it's very, in my opinion, it's a very nuanced way to think about it. Saying to tear it down, one might say, well, we're just tearing down because it shouldn't have been done. True in one way, but another way is like you may be thinking about you're getting rid of what should be looked at on. It's like, hey, you made a massive freaking mistake.
Mhm.
And I interpret it as a symbol of like you are celebrating a loss in a terrible time, but hey, we achieved victory over you at that point.
Yeah, I've had similar conversations. If you watch Geek First, one of my best friends, he's on there, Kyle, and we talk. And you check out when you watch Watchmen, go check out our review because I had him on, and we really want to talk about because he's a black man, and we've had these similar conversations before, and it is because you almost don't want to feel like a cover up. You don't want to feel like, oh, this didn't happen. Like, well, like sometimes people pitch, and I do get it as we're moving on, but it does sometimes feel like, are we moving on? Or are we just trying to put a fresh coat of paint over and be like, no, that was never, a thing. That's sort of same thing with movies, stuff like that, editing out. And it's a, like we were talking about
It's
before
tricky.
cast.
It's
It
very
is it
tricky.
is tricky, and I guarantee you, luckily, the MCU bought Fox, and they have a plethora of properties they're going to go through. So we could even wait a whole nother we could wait a whole decade till we see Frank Castle in the MCU, or even again. But there will come, because I guarantee you, let's say in 10 years, that's when he comes. There'll be another instant where some jackass will be wearing this logo and it will pop up again. And I guarantee you, they've either had that conversation and maybe they've said, you know what, we're fine with the logo and him being in comic books, but as right now, we really don't want to put him live action. We don't even want to cross that. And I would
Mhm.
understand that. Or they've said, we do plan it one day, but we need to figure it out. That's why I've said I think they could go the cosmic route, because like they kind of have some fun with it and they could kind of maybe retake some things. But there will be, or there has been, a conversation, and there's going to be more conversations about in the future. And I definitely am not on that side, but I'll read some of these live chat ones. Jay says,
Yeah.
I don't think Marvel should read that deeply into it. I don't think Punisher's actions have negatively influenced anyone. I don't think the average person doesn't see a skull and think of Punisher. That's a good point. I think us
Mhm.
fans right away jump to that's Frank Castle, but lots of people might just say, look, it's a skull. And I guarantee you there's a huge group
Hold
of
that thought. I've got some very interesting quotes to share with you about that idea.
Joe says, I laugh because Punisher would mow down all the people wearing his logo and not join them. My opinion, anyways. Well, yeah, we've kind of talked about before is I think it'd be similar to the cop situation where he would, maybe hit a couple roundhouses and say, hey, this is what the deal is. And these are from Twitter. Thank you to everyone that chimed in. We posted, and lots of people right away were on top of it. But Clay from Ranger Alliance, and he's on this podcast never said, I don't know if I could explain this all in one tweet, but the short answer is no, as far as banning the logo. The domestic terrorists known as the organic cheat on the White House want to wear a Superman shirt when he was shot with drugs to help regulate his breathing after having COVID. uh Clay again, very, very personal, but this is a topic that got people very fired up. Stupid people do stupid things. Punisher was never meant to be a good person, even those like Garth Ennis say it's best when it comes to Frank Castle, and I agree there as far as when we're talking about Frank Castle being the like a good or bad person or stuff like that. let's see, Pulp Culture Cafe says, no, we go down that road, and so falls Wolverine, Lobo, Deadpool, and any other vigilante society decides that it's sending the wrong message. Censorship is a slippery slope. And I was going to bring that up too with Wolverine of like, yeah, he is a good guy, but there's been times where he's done some really heinous stuff.
Yeah.
Matthew Salvatore said, I hope not. It would be a shame if they did. Steve Rogers just said, excuse my language, but absolutely effing not. And Steve, I will, you went on like a three
Oh,
tirade.
he did go on.
Yeah. And sure, I know what you guys were getting at with everything going on. I've seen it for myself. But Punisher was before and himself stands against all that. I think it would be a Marvel's fair to openly stand against police brutality and make it known too. You can use this show as Netflix as an example to point out and stand against the wrong people in the world. And Punisher does exactly that. I think that's what me and Chris have talked about. That there maybe potentially could be a way of, how do you and as I said, if they go the route of we want to use Frank Castle, I think that is the best route. Instead of ignoring it, embrace that and show this is wrong. The same way I feel like they do feel. Show, okay, go tell a story about this. Obviously, use it in the Marvel universe, change some things. You don't got to use the exact exact thing, but at the same time, I don't think they would do this. But one of the, some people didn't like it, thought it was in poor taste, but I was a fan of when they did the 9/11 comic book because it, to me, it was this thing of history of showing one, the impact of that moment, but two, there was this great thing of like, I know, and because some people I know have showed the panels, it's kind of cheesy, but to me, it was like putting all that aside, it's like showing like heroes and villains work together in this moment and things like that. It was like, this is greater than all of us. And that's to me is like why that comic book's kind of cheesy, is because this real life event is greater than all these superheroes and the importance. And it's the same thing that you could do something like this in Punisher and maybe adapt a real world thing. And I hope they go that route, but eventually they will have to not acknowledge it or address it, but if they ever do it in a grander form again, movies, TV, they will have to address it. But you know what? At the end of the day, they did on Netflix and they never addressed it. So maybe maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would just curtail and be like, we'll just try to wait until something actually really bad happens and we have to like something like a stalk or so like something really that affects Marvel. But I don't think it's these guys wearing the logo should affect Marvel and what they do with the character.
Yeah, I see Joe in the chat said, I would like to see the statues put in a museum because it's history. It needs to be looked at and remind people of history. Yeah, I've definitely heard that, but I've also heard the opposite thing that still in some people's opinions and definitely amongst the African-American community that's still hiding at that point. But again, it is a very tricky thing. Again, I'm a white male. All right. I'm a white male. I'm not Jewish. I'm saying these things that, again, I have had very fruitful conversations and very meaningful conversations with these things. And so again, it is very difficult when you talk about that. But yeah, I've heard that side. But I want to read a couple of quotes from well, after the statue. Yes, again, the statues are horrible in the sense of what they're trying to represent. I think I've made that clear up front. I'm just saying, a different way to think about it from other people that have had conversations with. But
and that's where it's just like there is like, I don't want to say there's not like a right answer, but there is just like there's, because I've talked to different people that are black that feel the way we've talked about or feel screw that, get rid of them. Like I don't, and that's where it's like when you get into these topics, there is kind of no universal right answer. When I look at the stuff that happened in DC, the universal right answer is all these people are cowards and they need to be put in prison and held accountable. That's an easy, like, these people are wrong. This one is like, how do you course correct a situation that was terrible, multiple things that we've talked about in the past? What do you do going forward? And because like you said with the museum thing, there is a risk of like, are you just hiding it? But is that thing where you are putting it on just to say, hey, this did happen and we're acknowledging it's something that I don't get paid to have to make those decisions,
thankfully. Yeah, so these are last, we kind of want to end it with the article, the author of the article did reach out to Garth Ennis, who had a huge multi-year run, a very celebrated run of the Punisher in 2000.
Great.
Made him kind of the definitive scribe next to George Conway. But he it's a series of quotes, but I'm going to read them just in its entirety because I think it's very pivotal, just like what I'm going to read later with Conway. I've said this before. I've said this a couple of times, but no one actually wants to be the Punisher. Nobody wants to pull 3 tours of duty in a combat zone that, with the last one going catastrophically wrong, come home with a head full of broken glass, see their families machine gunned into a bloody pulp in front of their eyes, and dedicate the rest of their life to a cold, bleak, heartless slaughter. No one wants to do that. The people wearing the logo in context, are kidding themselves, just like the police officers who wore it over the summer. He added, when they actually want is to wear apparently a scary symbol on a t-shirt, which is what we both have said, throw their weight around a bit and go home to their wife and kids and resume everyday life. They've thought no harder about the Punisher symbol than the half-wits I saw on Wednesday, referring to the insurrection, the ones waving the stars and stripes while invading the Capitol building. With regards to the skull symbol, he dismissed suggestions that of any impact. He said, no one's going to suggest that the American flag is now a fascist symbol. Talk about some other countries, I would say, and some people would interpret it as that, but and should be treated as such just because a bunch of would-be fascists employed it yesterday. I doubt there's anyone who would suggest that any of the clowns who wore the Punisher skull on Wednesday would have acted any differently in DC had it been that character never existed. They did what they did because their demented turd of a leader convinced them the election had been stolen. If you're ready to take violent action on the basis that then no bloody silly t-shirt you wear will have any bearing on the line that you've crossed. In fact, it's completely irrelevant. Again, quote from Garth Ennis, and I think it sums up a lot of what we said. Last thing, this is coming from Jerry Conway, the co-creator of Punisher. The Punisher represents a failure of the justice system. He's supposed to indict the collapse of social moral authority and the reality some people can't depend on the institutions like the police or the military to get the job done. The vigilante anti-hero is fundamentally a critique on the justice system, an example of social failure. So when the cops put Punisher skulls on their cars, members of the military wear the Punisher skull on their patches. They're basically siding with the enemy of the system. They are embracing the outlaw mentality. Whether you think the Punisher is justified or not, whether you admire his code of ethics, he's an outlaw. He's a criminal. Police should not be embracing a criminal as their symbol. In a way, it's offensive as putting the Confederate flag on a government building. My point of view is the Punisher is an anti-hero, someone who we might root for while remembering he's also an outlaw and a criminal. If an officer of the law representing the justice system puts a criminal symbol on his police car or shares the challenge coins honoring a criminal, he or she is making a very ill-advised statement about their understanding of the law. Going further, Jerry Conway also got so very upset about how the symbol is being used. He created a campaign for Black Lives Matter movement to take back the symbol and use it as a Black Lives Matter symbol at that point. So again, these echo a lot of things to say, but I thought it was very pivotal to part of this discussion to hear from the two most celebrated people in recent memory who have had, co-creator and Garth Ennis, who's celebrated run, to have their input on this, because I think it brings a lot of it to light.
Yeah, and it just shows to me, one, like he's talked about, they have a great handle on the work, and that's where it is. Those are the two guys to go to, but they just lay it out in much better terms than I ever could. And the one thing I did like what Conway saying about talking about him as a criminal, I think that's one thing that I really, really liked the Punisher show. I think John Barenthal is legitimately, like, people don't talk about, but I think it's the same way as like a Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I think he is like perfect casting. He is, to me, everything I wanted. But one thing they did do in that show that I thought was perfect, they did treat him like a criminal. They put him in court. They put him in like that thing where, yeah, the show showed him as like he's had a purpose for doing these things, but it is he is not a good guy, and it's not something that people want to strive to be. And then, like you talk about with Ennis, we talked before, but same thing. None of them would have put, like, without, if Frank Castle never existed, I doubt that would have stopped any events that happened last week. And it's.
And that's where I'm saying this is not because of a symbol. This is not because of a character.
Yes,
they have taken that character and the symbol on, and this is, again, I challenge Marvel, just like everyone else. You want to take back your character, you want to take it back, don't bench him, don't change the symbol.
Yeah.
Continue what was started last summer in the sense of that issue at that point. Lean into that. Again, you're never going to stop these people from doing it. Again, I agree. They just want a scary symbol to be scary at that point. There's a lot of things going on, but this is a deeper problem, goes beyond the Punisher and the symbol. If anyone thinks it's the same thing I'll say about video games, yes, it has an issue, but there is a more deeper issue of that point if people are using this to say, hey, I'm going to go after and rebel against my government. All
Mhm.
right. This is more of a problem. It's not a Punisher. It's not the symbol. It's a much deeper problem within our culture that we need to address.
Yeah,
Oh,
which
and we
we
got
have quite
another,
a
we
few
got,
of those.
we got someone else
We have
in the
quite a
chat
few of
jumping in.
those. Let's say I'm a black man. I can confidently say that I do not want the Confederate statues in America streets. What country outs up, or sorry, what country I think you meant puts up a statue for
Mhm.
violent rebels? And see, there's somebody that has a different
Yeah.
opinion as far as what we talked
And,
about, and it's a valid
and as we
opinion to
said,
have
yeah.
because it's like I can all I can do is sympathize and talk and kind of understand, but like Chris said, as a white man, I'm never going to be in that situation. I'm never going to have to have the worry or fear that many other people unfortunately have, whether sexual orientation or skin color. That shouldn't be the case in 2021, but somehow it still is. And that's the bad thing. Or it's just like these things still happen. And I was talking about this with a friend too. It's like, and put it in comic book terms, it's like we're talking about like real life versus the MCU. And it's funny because after Thanos, it was like, how does there be another big villain? How do you keep going on? But it's like that's almost art imitating real life, because in real life it's 2021. It always still feels like there's still another big villain. There's still something terrible going on, and it's just, and Lennox, if that's what you feel like,
No,
all power to you. I understand it.
No, and as I said, it's just a different view that I've heard that I never really thought of, because I thought one side and I said, okay, that's a very different side.
Mhm.
I am on the side of saying, yeah, you're right. Why would anyone want to have things that would be out there? But again, it was interesting to me to kind of hear that point of view. That's why I just wanted to kind of put it out there
Yeah.
as another point of view. But again, you're right. Why would we put something up there for people who were awful in so many ways that we can't even imagine?
Well, and that's the thing when it comes to these issues, and like and how we're going down some rabbit holes, but
Yeah,
it's
I
the
know.
same
Yeah, we
way.
gotta.
But like my last point, this is the same thing. Why, you know what, you can believe in politics you want, but when there's certain things when it comes to women's rights, I believe that should be up for women to decide. And it's the same way as me, as like the white guy. I can sympathize and I talk to like, hey, I understand this and I understand this. I see it this way. But if it comes down to the actual decisions and whatnot, I want no part in it because it's not my right to have that sort of decision. And it's the same thing as those big things shouldn't be decided on people that think this is best. All I can do is hear people out and go, okay, I understand this, or this is how I see it, or ask questions. And I think that's what we got to kind of do with everything. While we talk about logos, everything, it's the best thing. Even we had, with fandom, it's just best just to talk it out and try and figure out a way and not resort to what happened last week, or even what we've seen so far with Twitter and YouTube. Like same thing, Lennox, other people, they're not saying this in a mean way. They're not saying you idiot. Like
No, they're
they're
not.
conversing with us. And that's exactly what we wanted. It's the same thing with anything we said today. If you disagree with us, I am so open to you hitting us up saying, hey, you said this, I disagree with this because of X, Y, and Z in a conversation. Because conversations, if you end up yelling or just name calling, you don't remember that. You get mad, and then the next day you forget about it, you move on. But actual conversations where you learn stuff, that's what I remember months down the line and stuff like that. So
Uh,
I think everybody that contributed to this conversation, that was honestly probably our heaviest topic we've ever done. So
no, it is, and again, if again, I'm all about. I'm for those that are never. I've never put that. Again, I'm a former history teacher. This is stuff I deal with. I'm an school administrator at that point. I appreciate. Thank you for the love the show at that point, and I appreciate, like Travis
thanks,
said,
Lennox.
you being out there to talk about this stuff, because again, this is what this is about. I'll take it from BVS. We talk. We have this
Mhm.
conversation. We talk about what we side. Again, we don't have to, agree on everything to be friends. We don't have to agree to like certain things. That's what makes society what we should. This is what should be happening. A conversation.
Mhm.
Sometimes, unfortunately, it's not these days, and that makes me very sad. And that was one of my purposes as a teacher, and in a different way, I'm a teacher on this show too, that this is how we talk. This is how we talk about these difficult issues. And as I said, I wish in 30 minutes plus minutes, did we solve this problem? Probably not, and this is not going to go away. But I do appreciate you listeners giving us this time to kind of talk about this, because we did talk about punting this to the following week, but I kind of told Travis, I said, it's a moment in time that I think is
Mhm.
not going to go away, but I think the moment is now, because we don't know what's coming next week, and I don't want it to be buried, but I also think it was an important topic, and I'm glad you agreed with me on this one.
Oh yeah, no,
Travis.
that was full on Chris because I didn't want to punt it out talking about it. I was just like, oh, we got so much news, and
Exactly,
my
yeah.
hang up was I just want to make sure we talk about. But then what we decided, we met in the middle and said, well, we're just going to do a longer show, and that's what we did today. And as you can see, we're over an hour, and we've only just talked about the first two topics. So, uh,
But yeah, do you want to? We're gonna have a lot of ad breaks in this one, so get ready, listeners.
yeah, we'll take one more here, and then we're going to talk about something a bit more lighthearted as far as maybe the next potential big bad happening in the MCU. So we're going to have another ad break right now, and then we will be right back. So, Chris, earlier I was telling you about this hashtag, the hashtag Travis told you so. And I feel like this
Yes.
applies here because what you're going to throw the story. But actually, I'm going to introduce the story because this is
Yes,
something
go for it. Go for
I've
it.
been talking about for years on Geek First, and I've been talking about the very first episode of Marvel Alliance we did pitch our 6 stories we want adapted, and one of them was Doom War, which is funny enough because there's a rumor coming out from Fandom Wire. There's been other rumors before kind of tangentially talking about that Doom could appear, but this Fandom Wire now. Phantom Wire has a tricky situation because, and I know Travis Hines is gritting his teeth somewhere, the person that provides the scoop is someone that many people dislike. All I'll say is you're 100% fine to dislike the person, but they do have a track record. Do I put them in like a B tier? No, they're still lower, but they were one of the first people to report about the Toby and Andrew thing before other people did. People can say, oh, but the election news was out there. That's true, but they put their name on, right? They put their stake on it. So that's where it kind of comes down to that separate the art from the artist of, tricky situation. But if the scoop and the person has a history of getting some stuff right, that's the thing. And they reported that a few things that Doom would appear in Black Panther 2, not necessarily being the main villain, but kind of being the string puller behind the scenes. He would appear in a kind of smaller role, but substantial role, and you would likely see the armor. And this would set up him being a potential Thanos-like character. And this is one of those that I just want to be true because that's everything I like hearing. And that's why for me, the second they bought Fox, and I'm going to be repeating for some viewers that are listening to the show and to Chris, but the second they bought Fox, to me, Doom, and that's why I pitched in the first episode, was the natural point because it reminds me of X-Men 1 to X2 when the school's growing and Magneto says, don't you ever worry, Charles, about someone coming to your school. And he says, oh, I pity the souls that do. But in the next movie, these people come up and just mess the school completely up. And it just showed the escalation of more people feel the X-Men are dangerous. And you bring in Stryker, he tricks the government, and they do something about it. That's the same way I thought Killmonger was kind of like, I want to take out this certain group of people, aka mostly white people, because of look what they did to us. And Wakanda, if they would ever find out about this, it would be in danger. So let's just stop the problem. The thing with T'Challa is he wants to accept that problem and grow from it. That's where I think the second they reveal themselves to the world, it's to me set up perfectly for Doom, a character that's consumed with power. All he wants is power and to be above everyone else. The second he finds out there is a secret country of technology he didn't even know existed, or maybe knew a little bit like Cap, Shield, stuff like that, but couldn't get his hands on. To me, if you've read Marvel comics, that character, and that's why they did do more, but in the MCU even, he would want that. And I thought it was a perfect way of they revealed to the world, and here comes Doom. Now, it's tricky because obviously they've said they're not recasted T'Challa, so there's some aspects they've lose, but I imagine the main story of Doom invading or taking over, or maybe there's another villain that he is behind, could probably still be worked upon. It's more the T'Challa stuff, obviously, they have to kind of rewrite and go around, which is obviously unfortunate. You go back, we did a trivia episode and we talked about just Chadwick. And I also say, if you haven't, go watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I watched it last night. Really good film, really stylized, but it's one of those that when people say, oh, it's his best role, and you go, okay, are people just very, reminiscing because the times, and you watch it, and it's just like, he is incredible and he is fantastic. So I recommend everyone go watch that when you get a chance. It's just like such a talent we lost, but Doom, to me, it just feels like a natural progression. And the also thing, the scooper pointed out that it was more speculation based on their source, but said that they didn't want to do the traditional Fantastic Four thing. They're not saying they're never going to meet up, but they want something different. So it's not just, we had Fantastic Four in 2005. We had Fanforstic. I think it's kind of the same way as Spider-Man and Green Goblin. They didn't want to do that right away because we had it so much. So that makes sense. So to me, this all makes sense. If it's true, I like hearing the reports of him being a Thanos, because Loki, massive character. He's getting his own show. We're going to talk about that more. But Thanos is the be all end all for the MCU villains. And I would like them to try and recreate that with Doom, because that is a character that has a legacy of backing that up. So, Chris, how do you feel about potentially seeing Doom as one of the villains in Black Panther 2, or at least his introduction there?
Yeah, it's, you and I have talked about it. When I think it was a Fantastic Four when we had that discussion. I think we both
Yeah.
kind of agreed to the idea of that. And like you said, you've been promoting it for a while. I think this is a great idea in the sense of showing Doom is not and has never, even though introduced in the Fantastic Four, he has grown beyond the Fantastic Four
Yeah.
as we would call them, an Omega level threat. And because of his power, his desire for power in any sense, money, magic, the occult, the
Those
cosmic
rhinos.
power. Exactly. It is
He wants one of those rhinos.
wants one of the rhinos. Technology, he wants it to control because that is what it is. So, and there have been so many different things. I mean, you look at, the updated version of Secret Wars in the comics. I'm just going to leave it at that. He is a major player in that for many reasons, and what he can wield and what he can do it can be very scary. And so I like what they're saying, that we're not just going to see Doom not necessarily just out of the costume, but he will be very much armored up, and that's fine. We don't have to have everything put out in the Fantastic Four because he's typically a Fantastic Four villain. This is how you start broadening him out. You and I have also talked about how Kang is an Omega level threat for the MCU. Nothing says that we can't have, one or two majors teaming up for a means to an end to, rule this, not just the Earth, but the universe as a whole.
Multiverse, all that.
That is a power combo. Kang with time travel and Doom with his resources as well. That is a very scary threat.
Well, and that's a way of talking about when they could eventually meet the Fantastic Four. That's perfect setup right there. Or even, let's say we've talked about this before, that we have certain storylines, and I broke them down to categories like when could they coalesce. You could even have a way, if they do never team up, it's like this half the MCU is dealing with this problem, and this half the MCU is dealing with another problem. It's just, there's lots of potential going on, and it is interesting to see. And Jay brought up, as far as a story reason you could have him invade, because there's a lack of a leader there, and they haven't said what they're doing with T'Challa in Black Panther. But I do agree that I think they will find a way to write that character off, kind of by passing away somehow. And I think that is a good point, because Doom he's an evil guy. I've talked about one of my favorite things, like not favorite things, but like he sacrificed the love of his life just so he could become more powerful. And I always joke about this, Chris, but like he felt really bad doing it, but he still did it. He was, I don't, I love you, but like he had to rip this woman's heart out just to gain some more power. And Doom, he has a very Thanos-like complex too, where he doesn't see himself as the villain. That's the biggest thing. And I think that's the way they'll pitch it. That's why I brought William Stryker, is when he goes to the government and pitches, I got to take over the mansion. He doesn't even take it. He doesn't pitch it as he's going to start kidnapping these kids and all this stuff. He just says that we need to get in there and see what's going on. And they say, sure, but I don't want any danger. And then William Stryker goes off the handle. I could easily see a character like Victor Von Doom going to the UN, the United Nations, and be like, they didn't tell us about any of this for decades. You need to send someone there to see if they are legitimate about this, what they're doing with this, what weapons they may have. And maybe Victor Von Doom, being from Latveria, maybe he's high respect. They go, you know what? They don't know about his creepy skeleton of metal in his closet, but they go, I like Victor. Yeah, send him to Wakanda. Let's see what's going on. And then when he gets
He's a
there,
good guy. You can trust him.
Exactly. And then when he gets there, it happens. And that's where I think Doom has so many layers of which way they can go. And I just want a well done Doom. I want it very much. He is up there in my Marvel echelon as far as my favorite characters. So I think this is a prime situation. And it's not funny, but it is interesting that if he is pulling the strings, I do wonder. I think it has a little less impact if Namor's in it, because people were talking about that kind of the king and king battle, but there could be a new king, a queen. So maybe you get that. And maybe you get Namor kind of questioning this new leader as far as like, do you even have the stuff to lead this country? But, people are going to laugh, but it could be a very similar BVS situation where Batman and Superman are put on a trajectory, but Lex Luthor is in the background. The same way with Godzilla versus Kong, there's always somebody back there, right? And I feel like that would be the perfect way to have Namor as maybe Victor Von Doom is putting them some way, and you could get that realization of, hey, Doom's doing this, and that's when we see him suit up of like, I have a Black Panther coming after me and the King of Atlantis. What do I do? Well, I have this cool armor that has a lot of power. You know what? I'm gonna go. And the question I was going to throw to you though is, if we get Doom in this, we would assume then the Fantastic Four, them going to space, has already happened. Then I would imagine, right?
Sure you can, or sure you can't.
Or you think there'll be some reworking of that?
Nothing. I would say at that point, that's something that I don't think Marvel's going to just give up and not show the origin of,
Mhm.
at that point. But, MCU sometimes plays around with time in the sense of where things are placed in the sense of films. Just because we have a release order doesn't mean as necessarily is the time period. So, yes, to your point, could that happen? True. But I also think they're not just going to not see that kind of history with the Fantastic Four just because, again, Doom is tied to them very much in their history. I do like him being the puppeteer
Mhm.
in the background of this. I do like what we are hearing, again, that how the next Black Panther is going to explore a lot more of Wakanda culture and things and that nature, and a little bit more of a lot more about the history and building that up. We've got, Jay in the chat is saying, I could see the F-14 being time displaced, originally meeting F4 in the 70s and 80s. And during that time, he grew up in Latvia, up around up from the ground. He's snapped, and after coming back, he's bent on gaining the power and technology to never see his country fall victim to something like that again, even if it means invading other countries. And I think earlier he put up there, and maybe the reason he decides to attack Wakanda now is because it's a country without a leader. I think all
Mhm.
good points.
And then he's in a scene and he's like, if there's even a 1% chance that Latveria gets taken over, we have to take it as absolute certainty. But no, like, I'm joking, but that could be that thing.
That seems very logical.
But
I'd say
yeah,
that's a surefire way to win.
yeah, but that's where I could see Doom being like that. Of like, if something did happen during the snap, we talked about the time displays. I want to throw this one at you because I had been always saying that I thought Captain Marvel 2 was going to be the place. I've seen a lot of people saying that, like, maybe the makeup for, not makeup, but the reason why Payne Reed isn't directing Fantastic Four is because they're going to debut in Quantum Mania. How do you feel about that? Because I saw that a lot of chatter after this Doom story came up of, well, what if they kind of Spider-Man Black Panther them in Ant-Man, and then you get Doom over there, and eventually they maybe coalesce. But I could see that there is a lot of characters in Ant-Man, so that's my only worry. Not because we've seen a lot, but I just mean like a lot of storylines I want to see going on. He has his daughter now that's growing up. Wasp and him are forming a relationship. You have Michelle Pfeiffer back, so obviously she's been missing for like 30 years, so a little important. So like that's my only worry is like, is there a lot going on to say? Oh, and also the Richards and Ben Grimm are
But
all here.
yeah, I think in a sense that you could have them working for Pym Labs at
Yeah.
that point, have that tied, or have them be friends with Hank in different ways, or working. That's not that hard to work in, nor do they have to be a focus. It could be as easily as just putting them in. And again, you know, Ryan Choi being in Zack Snyder's Justice League, that character. It's not going to be, from what we've seen he's in it at that point. And again, there might have been a history with it, but again, it's as simple as that. You're just right now there in the background to be introduced. They don't have to have their powers yet. They don't have to be there. They're the scientists working.
Could you see them? I'm not gonna retcon's the bad word, but could you see them reworking their origin instead of them going up to space and them having that they are helping the Pims out with the quantum, and something in there happens to them, and that's how they
Mhm.
get their new powers? They're using that. I could see that, and the end
Mhm.
credit scene could be the tag of them like Reed stretching or Sue's going
Yeah.
invisible. Yeah, and some they're like, oh, like
Flame
what's going
on.
on? Yeah, yeah, and he just burns her whole
Clobbering
house and
time.
like I could see something like that where they get a shock and it's nothing in the movie, but the end credit scene is like teasing, like, okay, something's not right. I could see them using the quantum realm as the new. This is how the Fantastic Four get their power in the MCU.
Yeah, and I think that they're leaning into that the quantum realm as that, and exploring, and something goes horribly wrong. Yeah, sure. I mean, again, that's what the MCU has done a lot of times, taking ideas and making it their own and kind of twisting it to
Mm-hmm.
fit for their universe. and that works. I again, I love to see page to screen, but I also think I like seeing the creativity of adaptation, and I think so far, I think more times than not, I think the MCU has done a good job of
Mhm.
adaptation versus page to screen.
I agree, and yeah, Jay was pointing out that there could be a fun family dynamic of like the Reeds versus Pym,
Yeah.
and exactly, especially because Hank Pym's just an asshole in these movies. Like like that was one of some of my
Hey, that's
favorites.
that's one of the things they got right from the comics. He is a
Yeah,
jerk in the comics too.
that was one of my favorite things is seeing him and Goliath and Ant and the Wasp just like go off on each other, like why they're not friends anymore, and they're just throwing barbs at each other and just like, well, he's not that smart, like Michael Douglas he's so good in that role. So I do believe we could see that there, and this Doom stuff. Obviously, I'm still waiting for something a bit more official from like the bigger ones to be like really excited. As of right now,
Next year's investors call. That's when you'll hear it.
it could be, and then I hope when we hear it, it is played by so and so, which will probably be spoiled beforehand, and they'll have to deny it for months and everything by that. But you know what? I've said this many times, but I hope he's a little older, but I still hope that one day they say, yeah, Doctor Doom's coming. And he's played by Javier Bardem because that's always been my choice. It all depends on the age. I could see them going like younger, so that's why Javier might be out. But there's lots of great actors out there. I'm very intrigued. To me, it's not like a Wolverine situation in the mainstream, but for me, that Doom casting has to be like the second I see it, it has to like snap like, yep, that's Victor Von Doom right there. That's what I really need to feel when we see this casting.
Yeah, and especially I always talk about like with this character, the voice. Yeah, you can have a voice modulator at that point, do
Yeah.
it. But I think that even outside the costume, he's not only got to be commanding in a sense of presence, but also
Mm-hmm.
the voice too, because you've got to believe that okay, he's gonna be booming in that armor, but you got to see he can do it even outside of it. Maybe not in
Yeah.
the same way. But yeah, no, it's good. I like that your idea is coming more to fruition.
I
Feige
hope it's
is
still just a
listening.
rumor. Like I said, I'm still
Still just
waiting for
rumor. Yep.
the Hollywood Reporter, Variety Deadline, one of those to
Yep.
put it out there. But it is just one of those like, okay, this might be a kernel of idea. And even then, the way this is pitched, as far as him being a minor role, there's even a chance that they do the movie and they go, you know what, maybe we don't need that, and we could find a different way. So that's why until I get that cast or
Yep.
like a bigger rumor, it's all just fingers crossed right now. But I like that we're
Yes.
hearing them. I like that we're hearing them. So
Yeah, that was a nice surprise to kind of see that one drop at that point. That necessarily had nothing to do with Feige
mhm.
and this one.
Yeah.
All right, so now I think we're going to call this Feige time.
Yeah, the
'Cause I
Feige
think
hour.
that's basically most of the next stories. So we got Secret Invasion, Kevin Feige on adapting major Marvel comic event to Disney Plus series exclusive from comicbook.com. BD had a big day with stories. I'll tell you that much.
He did good,
Um,
and good for him. He's worked
yes.
really hard over these years, and he's a nice guy. So good
Mhm.
for him.
But yeah, in his conversation with Kevin Feige, talked about WandaVision. He asked about Secret Invasion TV series that was broken at the investors call. He said, "Well, there are more characters in Secret Invasion comic series than were in Endgame, so no, it's not going to be of that level amount of character. I don't think any of us thought that, but he does admit it's not that." It's not that, but it very much is showcases for Sam Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn and tapping into the paranoia elements of the Secret Invasion comic. That was great with the twists and turns that took. So that's certainly our focus more than can we cram in more characters than Endgame, like publishing. I like that. I think that that's a very practical way to look at it. I think that they will find it sounds like they're gonna lean hard in the paranoia, but I think that they know that they can bring in a few extra views and eyes on it to say that, if we get a couple of mid majors, maybe a major that could be a scroll at that point, that could really kind of turn it. Because I still remember, spoiler, I think one of the best seasons was the first season of Agents of Shield when they had that reveal that was the only thing that directly tied into Winter Soldier, the
Mhm.
revelation that Shield is Hydra, you know, and that was really cool. So what if you do a level like that, but now we've got an alien invasion, you know?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm on the more disappointed side, to be honest. I think they'll do a good job. I don't think of that. I'm not going like, oh, they really. I think it's something where we've talked about this with Greg before, where I feel Civil War is a pretty faithful adaptation. Does it have all those characters? No. Is the incident a little different? No. But it's like it took the theme of that story and did it well. It's still Cap and Iron Man. It's still there's an incident. I think this will do that as far as they'll take the theme of that story. It's just that you and I had talked about this a long time ago. Is like when they said, "Oh, it's gonna be a TV show." I was like, like I think Disney Plus is gonna be big, but there's still like a cap to it. I feel like right now, as far
Mhm.
as these big events, and that was always kind of what we worried about. And like I said, I think I'll still enjoy this show, but I was always kind of wanting. When we ever get Secret Invasion, I wanted the Avengers to be like fully involved in this deal. I did want
Yeah.
a movie of this, and it's one of those that let me see it, and I will judge it obviously then. I don't think they're going to make a bad project. I just think that it's one of those, okay, this is a bit more just in name and spirit than the actual story. And that's fine. Like you said, that's what they do. But it's just one of those as far as I feel like we're going to get the show and then we could move on from Squirrels and then we maybe never get it again. And that's always my worry with the MCUs if this thing goes on for another decade or two, that they won't be rebooting. It's not like, okay, I didn't like this version of Joker. Walking Phoenix Joker coming up, great. It's like, well, if I don't like this or if it's like kind of disappointing, that's what I have. So I like everything he's saying. I think the show could be good. I like it being a showcase for those two, but it is a little disappointing. Someone that was a fan of that story and wanted to see
Mhm.
it kind of get the same treatment that Civil War got to me of like almost in its glory.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That because I said it before that it needs. I thought it needed to be a mega level,
Yeah.
movie event. In that way, we know this is going to directly tie into Captain Marvel 2.
Mm-hmm.
We,
That's
we
true.
we know that. So the after effects of what's happening will be, if in my opinion, will have to be addressed in that. And it brings more of the idea of, we talk later on, the sword at that point, because that's a big factor in this. Because in the comics, the invasion was underway for a very long time, and House of M made it even more intrusive because
Mm-hmm.
it hid their true, how in deep they already were, and they took advantage of that fact because they weren't affected by Wanda's surprise,
Yeah.
as it were. Um, so again, yeah, I'm with you on the sense of I wanted it to be a bigger level event, but like you say, the tagline for that series was "Who do you trust?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to lean. It sounds like they're going to lean very hard into that idea of, as he calls it, paranoia. It's going to be called "Who do you trust?"
Yeah.
So
So it'll be interesting. I'm happy to get more Nick Fury. So before
yeah,
we continue on with these other stories, I'm gonna throw to another ad break, because then we can just knock a bunch of stories out because we got lots of good
ooh.
stuff still coming up in the Feige hour. So we'll be right back. And we're back. It's no secret. We're back. What do we got next, Chris?
All right, hey, we can't go Marvel Alliance for a while without some Spider-Man 3 stuff.
Nope, of course not.
Marvel's Kevin Feige on Spider-Man 3 casting and multiverse rumors, another exclusive from comicbook.com. Talking about the idea of what's going on with the rumors and fans. Feige says, I've read some of these things. I'm not sure I've read all things. Um, but the fun thing about the online speculation when it comes down to our stuff is how sometimes it couldn't be more off the mark and sometimes it's shockingly close. And that's held true for the last few years. But saying which is which would take all the fun out of everything. So, yes, we weren't expecting him to acknowledge anything, yes or no. As for the multiverse of it all, as many aspects come to see, it seems to be the story of the multiverse is going to be. Uh, a big part of this. And he addresses this by saying the biggest clue is the title of the second Doctor Strange movie. That's the biggest clue of where the multiverse of madness is taking us and how we're exploring that. Feige said, it's surreal to me that we're talking about Spider-Man 3. I worked on a movie called Spider-Man 3 many years ago, directed by Mr. Sam Raimi. So this clearly, the shorthand of it calling it Spider-Man 3 now is fine. It's fine. We're calling it Homecoming 3.
And it's so funny, like where life is that Sam Raimi is now directing Doctor Strange 2, and they had that working relationship. So, yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier as far as him being that politician level that he gives enough. I do wish Brandon, he said on his Twitter, he wanted to ask as a follow up question of who will not be in this. And I wish he got the time because that would have been good. And my joke to our chat was if he would have just broke everyone's soul and said, "Oh, Charlie Cox is definitely not in this," and then he left it off the interview. But yeah, I don't want this. I don't want spoilers. It's the same way as anything else. I remember that I learned, and I was pretty sure it was going to happen because I had seen a comment, but I didn't know for sure. But going Last Jedi, I knew spoilers that Luke Skywalker was going to die, and that just sucks so much. So it's the same thing as like, I. It's tough because we know Tom Holland has tweeted something out this week, and he tweeted out the date of Thursday coming up. So when you're listening to this, that'll be tomorrow. That could easily be some teaser for Uncharted, a poster. It could be a new project, be something with Cherry. Or he did have a little winky face, and we did hear from Sony that we're supposed to see something in December. We didn't ever see anything, so they just lied to us. So I do wonder
No,
what.
Sony lies.
So I do wonder. The big question to me, like we've talked about a few times, is will they reveal Toby and Tom? Will they, or sorry, Toby and Andrew? Where are they going to put that out? I know there's precedent, be like, yes, for marketing you have to, but two, do they want to say it? I don't know. I think that this was the right answer, and I just imagine it's probably lots of fun for him to read this stuff and know what's actually going on, and just like if you see someone think, oh, they got it on mark, or something, go, this is just completely wild. So I think this was the right answer to give because I don't want to know yet unless they do it in a marketing way, and we still kind of already know. We don't have set photos of Toby, but we see him sneaking around the Disney lot doing caution fitting. Like I don't think he's in the next Enchanted. I don't know why else he'd be there. So yeah, it's. But I like that quote about him talking about Sam Raimi. It's just so funny.
Pleasantville 2. Pleasantville 2. That's what
It's
he's there
shocking,
for.
huge. It's one of the universes they travel to in WandaVision. That would be so disappointing for everybody if that's what it was. That's where Toby's cameo was.
Yeah, and I like the idea of this theory that's out there. Wanda breaks the multiverse open.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's dealing with the chaos that it's created, and Doctor Strange multiverse madness is the one who has to put it back together.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it seems to be a nice little mini trilogy, or it is a trilogy, but a nice trilogy for that kind of mini saga that's going on at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll take a jump into actually good segue into WandaVision. Quick little story. WandaVision producer says Monica Rambeau's role wasn't originally mapped out for the Marvel series, coming from SFX magazine. Talking to executive producer Mary Livanos, discussed the research as a producer. She said, I've tried to read all the comics, noting every appearance of each character that I deal with, which is what caused the creative team to expand the cast beyond the two stars and include the grown-up Monica Rambeau, last seen as a child. Her inclusion in the series was a discovery, not quite mapped out, but it's really enriched in the show. And so, she said it's interesting, the inclusion, it's discovery, not quite mapped out. I like that they found a way to bring this character in, because on its face, I was like, what the heck is she doing here? And I think that's one of the things I'm excited
Mm-hmm.
about, to see how she fits into this series.
I'm excited for it too. I'm honestly still surprised that's coming. I know they've said she's going to be in Captain Marvel too. I always thought we'd see her there and then spread out, but I think it will be fun for viewers that are not like us that know. Like, there's going to be tons of people that don't know this is the same child from Captain Marvel, right? So they're going to probably reveal that at some point, that even tangentially she knows Captain Marvel, and they'll give you enough hints for the main audience to be like, oh, is she that little girl? Okay, that's cool. And I think to me it just shows that the MCU is very planned out, but they still make changes, and they're not just completely, this is a plan, that's what has to happen. If a character is presented, if a story is presented that makes sense to the route they're going, they will do that. They will pivot. I always use Age of Ultron as an example. There's lots of stuff like when they show you what the movie Thor Ragnarok is going to be, it's very different than what Thor Ragnarok ended up being. So it's like they always have a plan, but I'm interested to see this character. I'm very surprised how much she's in the marketing, which is a good thing. I thought she's only going to be maybe in a few episodes. That still might be the case, but she's getting character posters and people are talking about her a lot. So that's good. She's giving me Captain Marvel too. So yeah, we'll see more of that character, which is exciting because it's only when this drops on the podcast feed 2 days away. It's very exciting that we're gonna be talking some WandaVision here soon. I just can't wait. And is it two? That's what I said. 2 days away,
Yeah,
right?
I was agreeing with you too.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought I said I didn't
No,
say two, and I was like,
I was
oh my
agreeing with you. I was
goodness,
like,
but
yep, two.
yeah, and I guess how oh yeah, you guys talked about that last week about yeah, it's gonna be two episodes on the Friday we're getting. So
Yep.
that's pretty interesting. And yeah, I'm excited to see her and I'm very excited to see the show because it's finally after a year and a half some MCU content, some new stuff. So
Thank goodness. Yeah, so we can
yeah.
actually talk about actual content instead of talking about said content being developed. Continuing
Yeah.
on with WandaVision, WandaVision director reveals some of the MCU's biggest set pieces. This is coming from Games Radar. Talking with director Matt Skarkman, spoke to Total Film about the massive scope of the Disney Plus series. He said, "Law and Order, this is not. There was not 6 months of shooting people walking down the
Dick Wolf's
hallway."
mad somewhere.
I think he's rolling around in his mad money right now.
Yeah.
He goes on to say Kevin Feige was really clear from the beginning that this show would be very different, but it would also be as Marvel as anything they'd ever done, including some of the biggest set pieces they've ever done. And you know, they go into the idea, you know, how Mandalorian showed the words are tough, that you could look like you have massive set pieces and the technology just, you know, you look at it, oh, that's what did it at that point. So like
Mm.
you and I talked offline, it's going to be very, you know, that's an interesting quote to saying it's going to be as massive as the scale of Endgame level. That's going to be interesting. I think we're probably going to more see that towards the end of the series because of the results
Yeah.
of what Wanda's doing. Just because, again, they very much leaned into the idea and very much put forth that these are homages very much to the different comedies and dramedies of yesteryear. So there's going to be a point where this is going to expand outwards, and I think that's where we see those set pieces.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely near the back half. You guys had talked about some rumors last week as far as them getting bigger near the end. And I think because we had talked about that too before, and I talked about this Geekverse as well, is like, is it going to be going through multiple universe at the same time? But seeming now, just even from previews and the way people are talking, it seems like it's going to go, maybe each episode will be a decade or like leading into something. So I don't think it's going to be like a mix of jumping to and from. So yeah, it's just one that I agree with you. We do have Mandalorian, so I definitely agree, but it's just one of those, it's tough that like, is it just coach talk? Like Greg would say is like, oh yeah, some of the biggest set, like a sales pitch. It's like, okay, I will like to revisit that quote after the show. Cause like you said, Endgame, but you even have Civil War, the airport, you know, Avengers alone. So it's like, is there going to be something when I see the show that I'll put in my mind? Like, yes, I would link that with all those kind of big events or big fights or action set pieces. As of right now, I kind of go, I don't know, but we'll see once we get to it, and I'll be very impressed if they do it.
Yeah, I mean, so far, again, a lot of the early reviews, I have not read one. I just kind of see the taglines. It's been very positive, very, very
Yeah,
positive.
which is good. It's good. It's
Yeah,
good to see. It's good to see that it's still, you know, relatively, you know, it might be some weird stuff, but enough people are enjoying it. But again, we'll see how the audience reacts next. So
exactly. I'm gonna let you take these next two stories for very obvious reasons.
yeah, so we have some. I the word confirmation is such a fun thing nowadays, but it's being reported that
I don't
Marvel
think you can
Studios.
get any more confirmed than this.
I know. Marvel Studios cinematographer confirms Oscar Isaac casting and Oscar Isaac Moon Knight adds the Endless directors. So I have not seen the Endless direct, or I have not seen
Yeah.
them, but I've not seen the Endless, so I can't talk to the quality of that, but good for them. And it's one of those because it's different with movies. I always go, oh, I'm going to check out this director's movie before they direct it because I can get a sense of their style and if I like what they did. TV shows a bit different because like I don't think I'm going to commit to watch a whole TV show just to watch their episodes, but I you know, hopefully it's a good show and people like it. I'll have to look into it, but yeah, so we're going down the Haley Steinfeld route. It seems like Oscar Isaac, as far as we're going to just get a bunch of confirmations for months and months. We're going to get photos of him on the set, and still official word from Marvel will be, there's been no official casting of Moon Knight yet. And that's the thing where it's just like, you're right, it is confirmation, but it is just so funny that like it's still, we've had this come out. I know there was someone else that came out and said like, yeah, we're can't wait to shoot with Oscar. So like,
The
it seems like
cinematographer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like there was another cast member though. I thought though too, like it wasn't a stunt guy, but it was someone like that, like someone else with the
Yeah,
production. I was
you're
like,
yep.
I
Yeah,
can't
one of the
remember
stunt
who,
people,
but
yeah.
yeah. So it's like, so it's happening. I would assume. I'm very happy, as I've talked about before. That guy was my pick. It's just I wish they would the second he signs the dotted line and we're past the investors call, like what are you waiting for now? Like clearly I think the investors call was just there, it was to me a money thing. They're still deciding on, hey, what do we want to do here per episode, this and that. But I hate this game because I it's just one of those things. But hey, it like you said, I think this is as confirmed as it can be.
Yeah. So next one we
And then
have. Oh,
yeah, and then it talked about you said take the next two, or did you
I
put
was
those
saying
two
the
together?
two Moon Knight ones I was giving you at that
Oh,
point.
I see.
Just because I'm not going to take Moon Knight away from you.
That's fair. Don't take Moon Knight away. I'm what am I? I'm 5 days away from my Moon Knight omnibus. I'm very excited. Once I get my desk, that's gonna go right back up there. I know everyone's gonna say more Marvel, but like Moon Knight, I'm getting the volume one omnibus. I'm very excited to read it because there's stuff in there I have read before, but stuff I haven't. And my goal is to maybe collect every. This is volume one. I'm gonna see how many volumes they get to. At least
Again,
I'm gonna collect till I get to 2016, and then I'll be that'll be good.
as they say in near mint conditions, the only way you get a volume two is if volume one sells out and sells well. So you got to buy that volume one. That's the only way that
I'm
happens.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the timing of that omnibus because I feel like I honestly would have held off to the show because I still feel like Moon Knight is still lesser known. The fact that like I don't know if it's a guaranteed seller, but he has been picking up momentum these past few years. So to me, it will be interesting if he gets a volume two. It might, and that sometimes is what corporations do. They make movies and TV shows based on things that sell. So maybe that's why this show's happening because they're like, hey, people are actually really digging Moon Knight in right now. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Go buy it.
Oh yeah. Next one coming from Collider. Marvel confirms episode lengths for Loki, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and more Disney Plus shows. So Kevin Feige's talking about to them about the different shows and lengths. So he says
Mhm.
for instance, WandaVision started that way and Falcon and Winter Soldier as 30 minutes. But because it's streaming, it's Disney Plus, and the rules are a little blurred about over the years. Yes, some can be 23 minutes, some can be as much as longer than that. But She Hulk, for instance, is being developed as 10, this is big, 10 30-minute episodes. Some will be longer, some will be a little shorter. Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is being developed as a 40 to 50-minute episodes. Kevin Feige also stated that Moon Knight is being planned to have 40 to 50-minute episodes. So that's a lot of confirmations that we were not expecting yet. Falcon and Winter Soldier, yes, but like the rest of them, that's a pretty big kind of saying, okay, this is what we're doing with them. And it definitely fits with the way that they're talking about She-Hulk being more of a comedy, Moon Knight being more action adventure, kind of suspense at that point. It kind of worried me when we're saying Winter Soldier 30 minutes. Ooh, I don't like that. I want that to be a little bit
Yeah.
longer.
Oh no, I thought the same thing when you had sent that to me and I read the 30-minute Falcon. I was like, really? Like I feel like should have just been a movie then at that point because we're almost just at 3 hours then, cut half an hour, you could make that a movie. But yeah, this is all
But then
exciting
later
stuff.
that he said 40 to 50-minute
Yeah.
episodes. So
Yeah, yeah. He won't confirm casting, but he'll confirm all the run times and episodes counts. That's good.
yeah.
But no, I do like that because I remember that being with Mandalorian, a little guessing game. And as somebody that didn't love the first season, I was like, I just want to know like how long are these episodes? And they didn't really tell us, and that's fine. It ended up working out. It was a great season. But I do like that we kind of have an idea of these shows as far as okay, now I can set my expectations what to expect from Loki and Falcon and Moon Knight. And it's like with Loki and Moon Knight, it's like I'm looking at almost 4.5 hours of these characters, and that's more than enough for me. Like, obviously, I'll take as much as I can get, but I don't want the quality to go down. So the fact that they're planning that is exciting. It's She-Hulk. I'm excited for anything MCU, but the more they talk about it is definitely kind of slipping in the back because I like that they talk about WandaVision being a comedy, but it's in this very like tongue-in-cheek way. I am excited for She-Hulk because you and many others talk about Moss Lonnie, and there's lots of Hulk stuff getting in here, so that's great. But when there's stuff like they're talking about Hulk's dad possibly being in Mark Ruffalo, I'm excited to see when they keep using the word comedy is it very much a comedy? Which, okay, if it is, that's fine. But it's definitely the one I'm looking least forward to as far as just I don't watch many comedies nowadays, and when I do, they are more of the mature sense. Like I don't watch any network TV ones anymore and stuff. So it's just a personal thing. But I like that we have an idea of these shows, roughly what they're going to be episodes and length. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's just cool seeing it. Like I think the biggest one, I'm glad to hear the correction. Final Winter Soldier and Loki are longer. Same thing with Moon Knight. She-Hulk fits if it's billed as a comedy. You don't see many hour long or past 30-minute comedies at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting just because, like you said, WandaVision is kind of comedic, but I think what we've seen, it's comedy in the sense of circumstance and what they're doing and things like that. It's not necessarily true comedy. I think She-Hulk is quote unquote billed as a comedy, but it's not like,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see like sitcom Friends comedy per se.
Yeah, maybe it's in the sense of like Ant-Man, where I think Ant-Man is in the comedy genre. All MCU has lots of comedic beats, but I think the MCU or the Ant-Man movies are very comedy driven, and it's not just because of Paul Rudd, but it is interesting because I Moon Knight's not filming; they're about to, so that's great.
How are they
The
going to
other,
film without a star?
I know it's tough. They should just get John Cena if you don't want to see a start. But if you no, I meant like because the "you can't see me" thing, because he's not a
Oh,
bad
okay. I
actor.
was about to
Yeah,
say
no,
he's showing some shade at Cena there.
no, no, no. I
Very
think
subtle,
he's
very subtle. Okay.
yeah, yeah, I think he's hopefully a good peacemaker, and I'm very looking forward to that because I think he thrives in comedies, and I'm looking forward to him in Suicide Squad. Not so much in Furious 9 because I don't know if I can buy him as Dom's brother, but I cannot wait to see that train wreck. I think that it's funny that like Armor Wars, Secret Invasions, they're obviously in pre-production. They're not filming, so we didn't get those. But it's interesting that we know Hawkeye and Miss Marvel are filming, and he didn't drop those. So I feel like those are still in flux as far as what they are. Not even the like what genre, just the episode length and maybe runtime for those. Because Miss Marvel, they had talked about being almost a bit more lighthearted. They haven't described it as a full-on comedy
Yeah,
like
you're right.
She-Hulk, but
They didn't acknowledge that one. You're right.
yeah, and that's why I thought with the other ones, it makes sense why they're not talking about the Secret Invasion runtime because they haven't even filmed it. They might even still be writing it. But with Miss Marvel and Hawkeye, those are filming. We know they're filming. So, but they
Yeah.
didn't drop those. So, kind of interesting. That shows that maybe, and we'd even heard that. Remember with WandaVision months ago that at one point it was 6, and then it was 9, and then it was 8, and now it's back to 9. So that could be
And then
happening
it
with
was canceled, and then they
yeah.
brought it back.
And then I think that could be happening with Miss Marvel and Hawkeye right now. Maybe those ones, and especially because what did he say? He said She-Hulk, so I get why they're designing that. The other reason why I think Moon Knight and Loki could be just 6 episodes, I know they're longer, but still just 6 episodes, is because Tom Hiddleston, Oscar Isaac, they're bigger stars than some of these other people, and they have other movies and projects. So it's might be like this is the amount we can get with them. So where other shows you might like with Miss Marvel, you could maybe do 8 to 9, 10 episodes of 45 minutes because this is a new up and comer and she doesn't have to go film, the Bourne Ultimatum 5, or she doesn't have to go film Star Wars 10, which I know he's not
Yeah,
going to do, but
don't film any more Bourne movies, right?
no, no,
I'm
I
good. I'm
think,
good.
and there was that TV show, remember? I never watched it, but I heard there was a TV show and yeah,
Treadstone.
yeah, I wasn't interested enough to look into it, but I'm excited. I'm excited to look at all these shows.
Yeah, and kind of leaning into that idea of like, particularly with Moon Knight and Loki, we'll get to Loki. We'll just segue into that one. Of these are properties that are not just going to be one season. It's these don't strike me, and definitely now as we head into the story, Loki season 2 of Tom Hiddleston is in the works, and this is coming out of a Deadline story. Recent report from Deadline: Michael Waldron is working on Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie. The outlet mentioned that Waldron would also be involved in the second season of Marvel's Loki Disney Plus series in some capacity. So it's good to see him continuing on with it. And that this we Charles Murphy has also theorized that this would already kind of greenlit in the background, which is not surprising, yeah, in
Mhm.
that sense.
And
But
we had
that,
heard and we had heard
go ahead.
rumblings from even smaller sources too, like a couple months ago that they're already talking about a Loki season 2, and now it seems
Mhm.
like it's more and more happening now. So
Yeah, so it's good. It's good to see it kind of moving underway, and I think in a lot, I can't remember which interview, but Feige did say there would be single seasons for some properties, and there would be continuations at that point. I don't know. I kind of leaned on the idea that WandaVision was a single season, but he kind of let
Me
on
too.
that this is not a single season show. So we don't know yet.
Did he?
You
I
know,
missed that one.
I can't remember, or I might have misread it, or again reading between the lines maybe too much. But
Mhm.
I could have sworn I read something the other day that WandaVision may not be this Wanda story is not over in that sense. So
Well, it's Wanda's story, or hey, we don't know what happens to Vision, and maybe they even adapt the Tom King thing even more. And maybe he tries, you know what, this thing with Scarlet Witch didn't work out. I'm going to try my own family. But
build them
yeah,
on.
I like that. Yeah, I like the same way as far as yes, some shows are designed for one and some are multiple. That's great. And with Loki, this what's his last name? Michael Lambert, or how do you pronounce it? You know,
Waldron.
Waldron. Where did Lambert come from? My goodness, Waldron is just like it's because I didn't even know that he was writing Doctor Strange too. So the fact that when that article came out last week of well, he's writing Kevin Feige's movie, he's writing Loki. It seems like he's gonna be on Loki season 2. He's writing Doctor Strange too as well. He seems like Feige likes to get these guys that are John Watts, Russos that are in his kind of inner circle of guys that
Mhm.
once you do that, okay, you're on, Cap, now you're on Avengers, you're on Spider-Man, now you're on Fantastic Four. This same thing when you're in Loki, Doctor Strange, but now when he's like you're on Marvel and then Star Wars, which I feel is probably pretty important to him, as that's not one he wants to screw up. That all eyes are always on Feige, but that's me one especially that's gonna have the microscope on him. So to get this
Yeah.
guy, it gives me just a lot of faith for all the Marvel properties he's writing. Now it's the reverse if Loki comes out and people go really disappointed and you go, well, this guy's writing like a bunch of Feige's big stuff. How do we do this with that? But I think this gives me even more excitement and confidence in Doctor Strange and Loki. The fact that Feige said, yeah, come write my Star Wars movie, which we all know Feige's talked about many times how he loves Star Wars. So that to me is nothing but confidence now in this guy.
Yeah, it should be interesting. So on our last story, we've come to the end of stories and
Yep.
news. So a rumor from Murphy's Multiverse, Kristen Ritter's Jessica Jones to appear in She-Hulk. Tweet from
Yeah.
at Marvel News Hub, sourcing Daniel Reichman, Daniel RPK, states that Kristen Ritter is rumored to appear in the Disney Plus streaming series She-Hulk, reprising her role as Jessica Jones for the Disney Plus show. And he goes on to say, now again, the key word here is rumored. None of this has been confirmed, like everything else in life these days, although Daniel's reputation certainly precedes him, which it does. He very much is in the know. Nonetheless, if Ritter were to appear in the upcoming She-Hulk series, I'd expect her to appear as a rebooted version of the character with no link to the previous Netflix version beyond the same actress portraying the character. Fully agree. This is what we're saying with Charlie
Yeah.
Cox. This is what we've said with, if Bernthal comes in, Michael Coulter, they are bringing them in if they are true to be in there because people recognize them and Feige's not dumb. He's going to take on there are ways he can still own and make it his own, the character, but still keep the people have come to know as these characters in their role because they were great outside
Mhm.
of Danny Rand in my opinion, but um I think the rest of them worked really well, even though my factor of fiction was Jessica being coming into Captain Marvel 2 because of the history in the comics that Jessica Jones and Carol Danvers are a close friendship. This is not far outside the realm possibility because again, Jessica Jones is a private investigator, so maybe She-Hulk hires her to investigate. And if this is built as a comedy, yes, Jessica's dry, sarcastic wit could fit into this very well.
Yeah, I agree completely that I think that's the route they're going to go. She needs a PI. Oh, Jessica Jones. Then like you said, everything you said, I did owe that as far as the recasting, the rebranding of it. It is funny though, because I remember Marvel's investors call. We were kind of thinking like, oh, it's probably Daredevil. It still could be Daredevil, but it almost seems like Daredevil, if all these rumors are true, that his appearances in Spider-Man, maybe here as well, but then Spider-Man Jones over here. And yeah, I welcome it. I think Kristen Ritter is perfect casting for that
Mhm.
character as far as that more darker version of Jessica Jones, not the Pearl or anything like that. But I think that works. I am interested to see the rest because I feel that Cox is fanfare, she is fanfare, Bernthal does, and D'Onofrio really did. I think Mike Coulter was very good as Luke Cage, but I don't know if he has the same fanfare. But at the same point, is just if you want to do rebranding, is there a sense of them? We know that Jessica Jones and Luke Cage in lots of comics, like they were together in the show, but they like end up together, they end up married, they end up having a
Yeah.
child. If they want to do a full rebranding, and it's unfortunate for Mike Coulter, I could see them recasting Luke Cage though and getting a different actor if they want. Because then if you have the same couple, but then you put them together again, people might be not confused, but just like, okay, what are we doing here? Are we just copying Netflix and not making our own? So I think because of lack of fanfare, and if it's a potential rebranding, I could see Luke Cage being recast. And I because Iron Fist, I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be on the back burner for quite a while. Actually, I think not like for years, but I just think they have other routes they're going to go. Sung Shi is going to take up their kind of mixed martial arts, supernatural, spiritual, superhero. Maybe he can come in a sequel or something. So I'm excited to see her. I really want to see her, though. I've talked about this before that the rest of the seasons are not great of Jessica 2 and 3, but I agree with you as far as that first one, it is up there. When people were making that conversation of Daredevil season 1 versus Jessica Jones season 1, it was an apt conversation because Jessica Jones season 1 was so good with the writing, the characters,
Yeah.
David Tennant. It was, and I could honestly, if someone said that's the best season of Marvel Netflix, I wouldn't say you're wrong. I could literally the same thing as well make an argument for it as it was just almost perfect that season. So I do really want her back because I kind of feel almost like Berthold. It's kind of pitch perfect casting.
Yeah. And just how she carries herself in it. I mean, she has become that character. So it would be really cool to, see her come in. Because again, remember the quote that was said, you never know who other character from the Marvel universe are going to drop into
Yes.
this show. So they have laid that seed. So this is very much on brand of bringing them in for an episode or two. Again, Alias Investigations, always looking for
Yeah.
hire. So
And Feige even doubled down on that. Someone did ask him, to me, a smart question of, would you see the Marvel shows revived on Disney Plus or something? And he just said that we have lots of projects going on, but then dropped the, you never say never. So I feel like that's leaving the door crinked open for a reason. I think if he was like, you know what, that was a certain era, but we want to move on, we're done with it, he could. In the same way he was very early on, like when Blade was cast, he was like, no, that's like, because there's tons of kind of fighting with fans, but he right away was like, that's not part of this universe. Like the Netflix isn't, that's a separate thing. This is not a different character, and the MCU doesn't have. I'm paraphrasing, but doesn't have anything to do with that. Now he's not saying that universe does, but now he's doing the whole like, well, never say never sort of deal. It's like, okay, you're just waiting to announce it on your own or leave it as a surprise, which I'm completely fine with. If we're in the middle of She-Hulk and all of a sudden she knocks in that window, perfect.
yeah. So we'll have to see. But wow,
Mhm.
we made it through the news.
Yeah, that was a lot of news. Feige, be easy on us next week because we got to review WandaVision. So, but no, I like that because, and also it's just exciting because anytime now, before we got these with movies 3 times a year, we're probably gonna get this almost every time with Falcon and Loki, and that's really exciting. So
Yeah, he's gonna be making the rounds again, so he's gonna have to keep on. Next time it's not just gonna be Falcon. People, if they haven't dropped any kind of new updates with Black Widow, that's gonna be the talk of the town next.
yeah, I was gonna say that, and the other thing I wanted to bring up, we're not gonna talk much about, is just that if people didn't hear, Morbius was delayed to October as well. That was one other thing
The
that
hell you say?
yeah, no, it is. It's not coming out in March or April, which makes sense. It lines up with what Sony has said. The thing that just saddens me about that is not anything. I wish they delayed it into like the sky and we never see it. But I think we're very much set up for any day now or any month now to get that Spider-Man 3 delay, which if it has to happen because of world problems, of course, everything like that. But I still even wish with Spider-Man 3, if let's say we get to a path where we are doing like a HBO Max sort of thing with Disney Plus, I wish there's some sort of realm where we could make a deal with Sony, be like, hey, could we, put this out there? Could we pay you some money? Because man, I want to see Spider-Man 3 so bad. And I like with the Batman, that already hurt me losing that this year. But if
Yeah,
I also lose Spider-Man 3, because especially with Toby and Andrew, it's like I want to see that so bad. But I feel like we're getting, unless there's some change, I feel like we're getting close to that reality that Spider-Man will be delayed into next year, as Sony's already made a move on one of their projects. So
yeah. I also feel like it was a lot asking for that to drop within a month-ish of the last MCU. That's a lot asking, for
oh
it to
yeah.
drop in December.
Morbius
So
already has enough problems.
yes. But
Yeah.
again, we'll see what happens. I'll reserve judgment. Not excited about it, but they've got my money or my views
Yeah.
whenever they drop
They
it.
all anything Marvel DC, these bastards always got my money. But well, we're gonna take our final ad break because we got some fact or fiction to cover. We got Combo Club, so we will be right back after this last ad break. Okay, we're back. I guess it's time for me to pull up these fact or fictions last week. I found Travis had a big theme with numbers. All his fact or fictions was more than two, more than one. You know, he's the $1 million man over there. But fact or fiction: two villains that Tom Holland has interacted with will appear in Morbius. Funny enough, we were just talking about that. 68% fact, 32% fiction. I know you were fact on that, and I was too, just because. So it's like. Trying to think. Well, and I think you brought up a good point of like Scorpion and like there's potential Jonah and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'm fact on that one as well with everybody. More than one character from our Netflix shows will reprise their roles in the MCU. Even before the Ritter of rumors, I was fact on that because I think
Yeah.
once Cox is in there, that just kicks open the door. But 86% fact, 14% fiction, so not too many people on the fiction side there. And finally, even more so on an overwhelming vote, Thunderbolt Ross will appear four times in Phase 4. It's funny we didn't talk about the news, but Feige literally was like, I don't know when Phase 4 is ending. So I feel like now it's very likely, as far as you already talked about Black Widow, it's very likely with Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, well, I mean, not very likely with Black Widow. We know he's there. So that's already two. Hulk is or She-Hulk's an easy one. So all it takes is one more. I said fact as well, just because we don't know if Thunderbolts becomes a thing. If he starts recruiting other characters in the MCU villains, he could be a new end credit. He could be the reverse Nick Fury, you know?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So again, my turn for some fact or
It's your
fictions.
turn. Yep.
All right. So at the end of the series of WandaVision, we will have a cameo appearance of either Doctor Strange or Loki.
I'm gonna say fact because I think it's Doctor Strange. We talked about this on Geek First. Like, I feel like obviously they're not gonna get a cameo the size of Luke Skywalker, but I do think they want somebody to be trending. I think they want someone to be like, oh man, this person appeared, and just more of that, hey, a movie to TV show. So I think Loki, there's still potential, but I think Doctor Strange is the guy that he will look at what's going on, or he'll go to investigate. I could see that being the end credit of this show. So I'll say
Yeah.
fact.
And the only reason I say I threw in Loki is just because they've said this is a direct tie-in to Loki
Mhm.
as well. So him maybe a flash of like him actually being part of the TVA at that point, investigating what she's done as well, screwing with time, screwing with these parallel universes at that
Mhm.
point, or these pocket universes. So, but yeah, I'm definitely fact on that one. It would be just a cool segue into what's going on. Next one, again, I think, do I have a, yep. Oh yeah, it's all WandaVision today, as I said.
There you go. The
Uh,
theme.
Evan Peters' role will not be Quicksilver, but another Marvel comics based character in WandaVision.
I hope it's Marvel based. I hope it doesn't show up as like the Joker or something. That'd
Okay,
be
yes, but what I mean by like some kind of known property
yeah.
character.
What a deal. What a deal that Monday morning him and Jason Kalar come out like, yeah, the multiverse is really crazy. Hey, um this has been for me, other than the two things WandaVision I want the most is to see the show, just to see an MCU show. I've wanted that for so long. We didn't get that last year, so to see it now is great. Two, what the hell is Evan Peters doing? And I still think I'm still waiting for that moment where we finish the series and Evan Peters didn't appear at all, and it
Yeah,
was just
that.
one of those rumors that like was talked about and it didn't pan out or was never real. And there's still that sense of I got that, but I gotta agree to him appearing and also not appearing as Quicksilver. Um, I want Quicksilver. I really do, but I'll say fact. I do believe he's going to appear because I just think that there was enough backing from the trades. I'll say fact, and because I don't know, because what happens? So, what happens if he appears as both? What if he were to appear as Quicksilver as like a joke, as like to like trick Wanda, and then he turns into whatever he is, or aka
Well,
Brent's favorite Marvel character of all
that's what
time,
I was about to
Mephisto.
say. It's Mephisto, you know.
Make sure everyone tweet at Brent this week. Hashtag Brent loves Mephisto. But uh, but what happens when we get in that situation? Because it is a wacky show. If he's like as a joke, it's like, oh, you're not my like. What if he appears as both? What happens then?
It breaks Wanda.
To my answer though, to my fact, if I were to say fact, he appears in as a Marvel
Yeah,
character, and
yeah,
but he also appears as Quicksilver. Does that stay intact? My fact then?
yeah. I mean, I would say because
Okay.
he is. You know, I'll qualify it like his ending character, whatever it is, like his
Okay.
main character he bees.
I'll say fact because even then, I could think, wouldn't it be such a fun Easter egg if he is Mephisto and he could be like shape shifting? And like, let's say the real Quicksilver comes back and he somehow dies or goes away in the series, and like to taunt her, he turns into his Fox's X-Men. Like, I could be your brother. Like, they could have. I think though, because the show is
Yeah,
so wacky, they will at least make some reference to him previously being Quicksilver, just before the same way they do with Linda Carter in the Flash shows
mhm.
and like DCU and everything like that. So, or CW universe. So I'll say fact. How about yourself?
Yeah. No, I'm going fact. You know, Quicksilver would be a dream at that point. It just seems like Feige. There's a line to where Feige's going to go at that point, but this one he says like, you know, we'll tongue in cheek it at that point. We'll wink and nod, but we see Evan doing more than just that.
It's gonna be very interesting though if we do get that. And I'm so fascinated to hear the conversation if they do just full on replace Aiden Taylor Johnson with him. Like
Yeah,
that'll
that would be
it's
like, all right, weren't good enough, bud.
yeah, like there will be a conversation had. He'll be asked about it. It'll be very interesting. But what's your final one?
My final one, um, we get Wanda saying no more, or a definite callback to the line, but it won't be mutants. Because obviously we don't have necessarily mutant yet, but my more point of the question is like we get that line in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like a line inspired by that classic moment. I think so because I'm not surprised because I know they feed them information. They say, read this, blah, blah, blah. But when she's interviewed on Jimmy Kimmel last week, and on Jimmy Kimmel, she used the words House of M. She said it was one of the inspirations. She didn't do the classic, oh, it was inspired by lots of comic books and it's great. She said House of M. Yes, that could just be a buzzword. But to me, you use those buzzwords when you're on the Comic Con stage, not on Jimmy
Yeah.
Kimmel Live, where the audience, my mom watching House of M, oh my goodness. She's talking about, no, like, so the fact that she said that, I do think they could have said, we're referring to this scene, we're referring to this type of theme, we're referring to this moment. So I think there will be even if it's same thing as Quicksilver, a tongue-in-cheek thing. What if it's something just like no more pets or like something like that? Like there could be something where again it's a joke of line, like, see what we did there, the same way as
Yeah.
Avengers. And then they cut off an Age of Ultron, right? Of like, we all knew, and it's like, damn it, they almost got to it. I could see that as far as, teasing the big fanboys and fangirls. Like, we know what you want her to say, but not right now, it's something like
Yeah,
that.
we have
So,
to have mutants introduced first
yeah,
before
yeah.
you say,
So,
and that's what I thought about. It's like it's such a pivotal line of the series at that point and what it led to. So it would, if it doesn't happen, that's fine. I just
mhm.
think it's a cool thing that they could give I mean, we already said that the wine bottle is basically in French, House of M.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm going to impromptu throw out one because I was going to say it
oh,
for next week, but because I already talked about earlier, I'm going to hit you with it. And it just based on our conversation.
yeah.
Fact or fiction, will Kevin Feige appear in the Deadpool 3 movie?
I thought I already said yes. Maybe I
Did
didn't.
you?
Well, maybe we never got to that point. It's like, yeah, why not? It,
It's
it it would totally fit in the brand of that, or it would be one of these things that it would be in the trailer, but not necessarily in the movie for it. You know?
Mhm. Okay, I could see that. You may have said yes, but it has also been a show full of so many. We've gone from Deadpool to the seriousness of Punisher to Doctor Doom and all the way back. So yeah, I'm a fact on that. I was gonna say it for next week, but it might not be Poe next week, and I might have some new. Yours are WandaVision themed. That's a good thing with the show. I might have some themed as well based on that episode because we might have some new
Yeah.
information coming out. So yeah, I will put those out. I'll definitely because I'm definitely gonna put those out before the show drops on Friday this
Yeah,
time.
we're
I'll
gonna
go
have to
early.
because we don't know.
Yes.
Like I think it was one week. Well, I can't remember when my fact became true. Oh, the Charlie Cox rumor came out, and then we
Yeah.
had put out that stuff. It's like, well, Chris was right or early, possibly. So
Not that I think they're gonna show Evan Peters in the first. I don't think they're gonna go balls to walls like that, but just so it's out there, just in case.
yeah,
So Yeah. Speaking of WandaVision, what are we, issue 5 now of Vision? It's 5, right? Or is it 6?
No, 6.
Is it 6? Jeez Louise. It's already, so we got
You
a
read it,
little
right?
ways to go. Yeah, I no, I did read it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
read it. I actually read it early this time because I
Yeah.
usually like leave it the night before, but I had some time the weekend. I was reading it while Pittsburgh was getting destroyed this weekend. So, yeah, you go first. What are your thoughts on this issue? It's a very interesting issue with lots of dark turns in this one.
Yeah, this is I just like the neighbor coming into this whole thing because the neighbor in the
Oh,
beginning we get a revisit of the neighbor. This was when I was saying I remember, since it's been only like the second or third time I read it, but it had been a while. I remember moments of the book, and so
mhm.
this was a moment I remember. I just couldn't remember where it fell into it. The moment of the dog, digging up Grim Reaper, getting killed. And then I love that the neighbors coming over to investigate where the dog is, and the whole house is utterly destroyed. And
Oh
and
yeah.
Vision's wife is like, "Oh, we're doing some remodeling," and he's just kind of accepting as like they're
It's a
just
war
strange.
zone. It's a war
Yeah,
zone in there.
it is, and he's just like, "Oh, digging a pool? Yes, yes, we
Mhm.
are."
Yeah.
it's it's again, it's Vision coming to terms with, but not really, with covering for his wife. Like, that was a huge thing that was done. We don't get much acknowledgement at all yet. He's almost like trying to process what's going on and how to address it. Um, and him getting, just trying to keep the big thing. Vision understands what he's done and what he's covered for, but he is holding so much onto the idea of family,
Hmm.
so much so that he's willing to take the brain of a dead dog and create a dog that almost looks like, in no, not the exact same dog, but it's just like you all of a sudden got a dog when the other dog came missing. That's not
Yeah.
fairly obvious.
What are the neighbors gonna say about this? This is the episode where it's like I'd be going home to my wife, like, hey, it's time to move. We're out of here. I saw their house. They have a green dog. We gotta get out of here. Yeah, it's a setup issue, but not in the sense of lots of setup issues we've talked about before when we've done comic clubs. They're a bit more slower paced and there's not too much that happens, but it's just like, okay, here we go. I think the first half of this, other than the dog digging up the Reaper, is a little slow because they keep talking
Yes.
about the P versus NP, but then that back half just is like boom, 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 all this sort of stuff. And I think that's why it's a setup issue for like really, okay, it's all hit the fan. And that's why we were talking about this a few weeks ago when I called Vision a villain. You're like, oh, he's not necessarily a villain. I was like, you're true, you're right. And that's where the problem of sometimes when you've read these events in your mind, because I remember reading this issue being like, okay, there's two things you don't do in media as far as the good guy or like anything, but like until you take a really dark turn. You don't kill babies and you don't kill dogs. And no, he didn't kill. Well, we don't actually know if he killed that dog because that dog was looking burnt, but it was still looking alive. He may put it out as misery, sure. But then to go to take the dog's brain.
He a little extra crispy there.
Yeah. But then to take the dog's brain and to make it your own and everything like that is like, okay, to me he's on the villainous side. Is like maybe he's not hurting. He is hurting other people though. He's taking people's dogs. He's covering up for his wife fully now. Like even then he's like, oh, if you
Yeah.
had told me the problem about the Reaper and everything, I would understand your actions. But still, like, it's not. This wasn't the point where you turn around and went, oh, I'm way over my head. This is wrong. He's just going deeper and deeper into it. So, oh yeah.
Yeah, again, this is where, I didn't read that opening thing, the P versus the NP, because it's just like the first time it's just like, what the heck are we talking about
Yeah.
here? And once you kind of read the issue as a full, it's like, okay, I kind of see where we see Harkness kind of show up again. You know,
Mhm.
this is the idea that he is striving so hard to be. It's not even
Normal.
normal. It's just, well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's normal, but it's just like he wants to have what he's had in the past and can't, and lost with Wanda.
Mhm. Well, it reminds me of my one of my favorite, and that's why like it reminded me when he's like come the dog's brain. One of my favorite shows we've talked about this before is Dexter, and when
Yeah.
I talk about normal, that's one of my favorite things. Is like he has this conversation with Rita. It's not big spoilers for the show, but he's a serial killer, and she's just like, "What do you want?" And he's just like, "All I want is a boring." Normal life where nothing happens, and she goes, I want that too. And that's where I get the sense of like you're right about Vision as far as trying to recreate something, but I also just think he does want that when he's talking to his wife, talking about like we have to put forward that we have an agenda, but we don't have an agenda at the same time. Our agenda is to be normal, but we can't let them know that we have an agenda to be normal. We just have to be normal. And it's like this whole like, man, this guy is going through like a personal crisis of like he's thinking of layers upon layers, and he does have to because he's looked upon a different way. But yeah, again, like I said, he is trying to, but it is that classic thing where he's trying to do the right thing, but now he's doing all the wrong reasons and all the wrong aspects. And that's where it's like I said, lying to the neighbors, taking the neighbor's dog. He's covered up for his wife more now. And it's just, he's just engrossing himself more and more in lie. And that's where I remember this issue of me being like, I get where he is, but it's hard for me to, I get the, not in a bad writing sense, but it's hard for me now to root for him because it's like, you're getting too, you're too far gone. It's very much like, that's what I talked about when Pierre always, I don't know. I don't want to get in the debate of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, but that was my thing of like, that's the point to show is like, you're not that you sympathize with him, just this is a lost guy, but eventually crosses the line where it doesn't matter how lost you are. I just can't, I can't follow you. I can't support you. You know, I sympathize with you, but now you're too far gone. And that's to me, vision in this issue is like, no, I can't. You're because what's going to happen next now? You know, the fact that you're fine with all this, not fine, but you've covered up the Reaper, you're covering up the boy and the father, and now you've taken this dog. It's like, it's just escalating very quickly and very badly.
Yeah, and in the sense of like he's worried even more about the kids. His kids are, especially his daughters, basically come back from death at that point and having such a hard time dealing with what's going on, and his son's just trying to figure out, if you prick me, do I bleed? Am I normal? And
Yeah.
and the idea of a dog is something that they can be happy about or understand like what that is. But you get to the end and kind of Harkness kind of says, and so Vision has abandoned the illusion of P in favor of the reality of NP. He will now do everything in his attempt to find happiness for his wife and children. He will kill you. He will kill you. He will kill your families. He will raise the world. And you kind of pan up and you see basically the Avengers kind of listening to her, and it gets
With
to the
Wanda.
yeah, with Wanda there, and we get to the next issue is the issue I've been waiting on to get back to, the issue about him and Wanda.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm very excited for next week because it is a good one.
and what a perfect issue.
Yeah.
Man, we couldn't have timed that any better.
Yeah, it really lined up. And yeah, that all I wanted to say about that panel was just we talked about like how Vision lies and his dark past is escalating, and that's where you know
His dark passenger, maybe.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and that's how you know it's the ultimate escalation when you pan and go, oh well, now the Avengers are involved, and they sometimes solve world-ending crisis. So yeah, it's I'm very excited for next week. But I did really enjoy this issue, specifically the back half.
Yeah, it was definitely very good. But yeah, before we kind of bring the episode to a close, we've talked about WandaVision, we say, but we're finally here, ladies and gentlemen. The next episode, and from here on out, Travis and I talked about different ways we could do this. We talked about maybe doing separate mini episodes at that point, but him and I's both schedule and family lives at that point, it just seemed like what we're gonna do with this at least first iteration of a Marvel series, we're going to keep it with the show. Yes, by the time it drops, you've got basically 2 days after, but we want to have this kind of be right now in this first Disney Plus show to be part of Marvel Alliance proper. It will be the lead part of the show, so that way, Comic Book Corner will still be at the end. We'll always lead with Marvel Alliance, with WandaVision discussion and spoilers. So we are very excited. And I think I said last night on DC Alliance that, am I going to stay up? It's probably the one I might just change over my workout schedule to watch WandaVision, so that way we can talk about it at that point. But I'm excited. This is a big moment for Marvel. I'm glad to hear positive stuff. I can't wait to see it. I'm definitely kind of keeping my expectations low and just being excited about content, not necessarily expectations for what I want out of it. Because to be frankly honest, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this show.
Oh yeah. No, it's gonna be very exciting, and I think throughout the series and whatnot, we'll have some guests on to talk about everything. But yeah, it's gonna
kind of
be a good
similar.
time.
Kind of similar to what if you follow Star Wars Alliance, what they did with
Yes.
Mandalorian. So
yeah.
So
I can't wait.
Whew, all right. Almost, basically, including ad stuff at that point, a little over 2.5 hours. So we made it under the 3 hours, but we knew this was going to be a big one.
Yeah, we did. It was a good one though. So yeah, I was happy to be back. I'm excited for next week. And yeah, as always, you can find me Travis B. Snell doing a bunch of stuff all the time. Geekers, we're about to drop our bloopers episode. So if you've never listened to one of those are fun. It's the
Hmm.
bloopers best stuff throughout the whole year. And yeah, check out all the great shows on Geek Ultimate Alliance. And as always, hope everyone is happy and healthy and safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast, me personally at Chris Balga. You can email the show at Marvel Alliance Podcast at gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, fact or fiction, to ask us questions. We're gonna definitely want to hear your feedback next week on the first two episodes. So definitely, even if we don't put out the thing out there, definitely tweet at us and we'll definitely bring those up on the show. Continue to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or whichever your podcatcher choice may be. Thank you for those of you in the chat. We definitely had a very good discussion with stuff. Thank you all for letting us have that time to discuss a little more serious than we usually do get. But again, we do appreciate it. We hope you gained something out of it and gained some perspective on stuff. But again, a lot of great contact. Thank you, Mr. Feige, for letting us into your mind a bit. and sharing at that point. But as Travis said, stay safe out there. And as always, as Stan the Man would say,